But that's all, you know, it's not like even.
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Yeah, great. Yes. But I say I think I'm not. And you're only having so, you know, maybe
yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
That I will follow up with you.
Good evening. How are you? Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to Welcome everybody here tonight. It's Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. It's now 6:30 p.m. on a beautiful Tuesday evening. And we're here to...
What?
Okay. That was fun. I got to hear myself twice. That was good. And we're here for tonight's city council meeting. And I want to thank all of you who are here tonight for your attendance and participation in this public gathering. And how many of you are seeing a few leaves on the ground as of late? Starting to see a few leaves, and I know it's time to get the rakes out or the blowers and getting those things kind of moved around, but certainly seeing a lot of that. And I don't know if you noticed, but it seems like the tips of my fingers are getting a little cooler now. I don't know what it is. I need gloves. It's just kind of the maturing process, but certainly winter is moving closer. And I think Thanksgiving is right around the corner, isn't it? Time is flying. They say that age is like miles per hour. When we were kids, like, summer would never get here. But of course, we were 5 years old and we were going 5 miles per hour. Or some of us are on the freeway now. We're going 60, 65 miles an hour. Some of us are going 80 miles an hour. We're on the Autobahn, and time is just flying. And so it's amazing how proportionate it is in the maturing process. But anyway, welcome tonight. Glad to have you here. Please join me in as we say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Let's see. Mr. Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember King.
Present.
Councilmember Palmer.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Whitting.
Present.
Councilmember Dorr.
Present.
Councilmember Ferris.
Present.
Councilmember Castema.
Present.
Mayor Johnson.
And present. Thank you, City Clerk. Council, before us, we have a pretty robust 3-page, or actually 4 pages of an agenda tonight. And so if I might entertain an approval of the agenda so we can get through that.
So moved.
Second.
So council, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as stated before us. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Council, we also have the consideration of minutes for October 24th, 2023, as indicated on 2A. You might consider a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes for October 24th, 2023. Short of any discussion, I might entertain all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Thank you. Motion passes. At this time, we have citizens' comments, and it seems like we haven't been here in a while, but maybe it's been a few weeks. I don't know. Time seems to be kind of busy as of late. But if you would like to speak, as you come in, there's some orange or yellow sheets. It's not too late to fill one of those out. If you'd like to speak tonight, I'll call upon those who have filled one out. If you still would like to, please slip over there, fill it out, give it to our city clerk, Dan, and he'll give it over to me, and we'll call upon you to speak and love to hear your perspective. First, we'll call upon Paul to come and give us some information or thoughts on the Van Leert Park.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. My name is Paul Romich. I live in District 1. So tonight we're going to go over a couple plans for Van Leert Park, and I don't really think they accurately reflect the residents' desires for preservation of the park. And this goes back.
Could I pause for a moment? Is the microphone up on his? It seems like it might be a little light.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll speak up.
Okay.
It doesn't accurately reflect the residents' desires for preservation. In 2019, when the Parks was going through, or Parks Department was going through an update to the pros plan, they surveyed residents, and back then they said that if facilities were added or increased, they want the highest priority would be for, I lost it here, trails and environmental. And then for the actual Van Leert plan, there was the survey came out and people voted heavily in favor of open space. And but he didn't let them decide distinguish between preservation open space or just mowing it flat, right? And then in the pros plan itself, there is from the Washington State authority, recreation authorities, the demand expectations and the current demand expectations for sightseeing and viewing wildlife exceed any future expected demand in 2050 for any of the combined uses of the future park. So when you consider the demand element, right, it makes you kind of wonder why we're forcing a square peg into this round hole of Van Leeuwen Park. It's on the edge of the city. It doesn't make sense to build amenities there where you need to travel through the hardest, most challenging avenue of the city to journey through that, which is Shaw Road, and that's coming from the comprehensive plan survey. So when we consider where we're putting the amenities, let's put them actually where they'll be used, and more closer to the residences. And I think that would be more in line with Puyallup's agricultural history, as well as just a smart long-term investment, regardless of the warehouses that go up or around it, right? Because if the warehouses end up tearing down all the other wildlife, all the other landscape around Van Leeuwen, right, it might not be peaceful and serene for me and the other residents, but our furry friends or feathered friends, right, they're still going to find that as an oasis in that wasteland of urban sprawl. So I want all that to be considered as part of these plans, and because it hasn't been considered yet, I also would like the city to council to consider establishing a level of service requirement for resource conservancy, because that has not been established even as early as the 2020 update to the pros plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, next we have Mr. Chris Chisholm, District 2. He wants to talk about item agenda 3A.
Thank you. That was quick. Yeah, Chris Chisholm, District 2. Before I talk on that, I was going to mention somebody talked last time about the utility bill, so I went and looked at mine. And I was like, right. There's no way to find how they're all, why all those different bill parts of the bill are there, and how much it does say how much we use, but it doesn't really correspond to the cost. Anyway, I just really like to encourage you to talk with the utility department and ask them to do a real detailed breakdown on each of the bills so people really understand. That's a great idea that person had last time. On this agenda item, on your consent agenda, really glad to see that you're updating your contract with SCORE, the jail up in King County for certain circumstances of use. And I just want to remind all of us in this room that we're all Pierce County residents, Pierce County taxpayers, and we have a Pierce County jail sitting empty, 4/5 empty. And if there is any block to creating a contract with the Pierce County Jail, that should be addressed. That should be, whether there's some sort of personality things going on, or if, obviously there's logistical things, clearly, and staffing, all that kind of stuff in order to open up a fourth pod over there. The third pod's not nearly full at all, and is staffed and ready, except anyway. So, but, our Pierce County executive lives in town. We have a Pierce County representative to the county council that many of you know and are friends with. And all of us should be working with them, as well as corrections over at Pierce County and the sheriff, who we elect as well, to look to the future and utilize that space that we're all paying for and is just sitting empty. That's where our energy should be going. That will save us a lot of money. The Lakewood is only paying them $96 a night, plus their, booking fee, plus mental health, which I think the SCORE contract on your consent agenda is regards, mostly, when we need to find a mental health bed for somebody. That's what it's being used for previously, as I understand it. The medical and mental health wing over Pierce County Jail is modern, built 20 years ago. I wasn't here then, but you all voted, a majority of people voted in Pierce County to build that huge 1,008 bed primarily misdemeanor jail, with this really nice medical wing and mental health, capacity over there. We really need to utilize that. So anyways, obviously we can make a contract with SCORE, sending our money out of county while empty beds are in our county jail. That's where we should be spending our money locally. Tacoma, King County is local. That's our jail. And also don't let this, is it over? Oh, I was going to say Nisqually jail. You've heard that there's liability issues. Talk with the city attorney at Olympia, at Lakewood, at city attorney at Tacoma. They've done it. We can do it too. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, great. Thank you for that, Mr. Chisholm. Next, we have Mayor John Hopkins to give us some insight about permits in Puyallup. Enlighten us.
Thank you. John Hopkins, District 1. First off, congratulations.
Thank you.
Another 4 years, right?
For 4 years, yeah.
Very good. Permits, primarily the remodel permits. Last time I'll talk about them. I just wanted to dispel a few misconceptions that may have occurred. I think Development Services does a really good job. Staff are absolutely excellent. When they actually get the complete permits through the portal, they respond quickly and they get them reviewed quickly. So there's no issues there. It's the portal. That's the problem. It's difficult to manage. It's very, very complicated. It's like a faceless gate that most people, unless they have a lot of experience, have no clue how to get around. We do have people who will help. Meredith has been really good as far as helping. Joyce is good at helping, but you need more people on that to make it more of a personal experience to help you cross across there to get your permit handled. Otherwise, it costs you a fortune in holding fees, and it usually gets the people who are less experienced at doing that, who are the ones that are doing the improvements downtown. So anyway, I'm pretty much done with that kind of stuff now. So I'm just hoping that you get it fixed for the next people. Regarding Proposition 1, well, now you got your work cut out for you. But there's a couple of things that I would say are encouraging, and that is the no people, that includes me, are not opposed to improvements to police facilities. Without exception, every one of us wanted to see improvements to police facilities. And there are many, many options. You do have options right downstairs. We got a whole floor that could be used for augmenting the space. We have on the hill. Now, the police frequently, they spend more time up at Public Works. What could be done up there? I don't know the answer to that, but maybe there can be some facility work done up there. Between those two things, you could free up some space in the existing facility and enable some remodel work done. That building is not as bad as it's been portrayed. It had a major remodel in the 90s. I know because I did the electrical on it, and it's perfectly good shape. Now, yes, the roof's going to cost a bunch of money. We all know that, but still, I know that with some creative people, you can get some things done, and they'd be totally supported by the public, 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Those are all the comments that were submitted tonight for consideration. We do have some folks who are participating online or Zoom. I'll go and acknowledge you if you'd like to speak. There should be a hand or icon, thumbs up icon. If you want to indicate that, I'll certainly acknowledge you if you'd like to speak. Okay, so I don't see any more. We're going to close citizens' comments. Thanks everyone for sharing your perspective. Certainly appreciate that. Council, we have a consent agenda before us, items 3A through 3H. Was there anyone that wanted to pull any of the items off for discussion or questions, or are we going to entertain the whole kit and caboodle from 3A to 3H?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. All right, Council, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda 3A through 3H. Short of any questions, which I don't see anyone want to come up, I'll indicate an opportunity for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, Council. We now enter into the public hearings. The first one is 4A. It's a public hearing and first reading on an ordinance determining and fixing the amount of funds to be raised by regular property taxes for 2024. I do understand that perhaps our Finance Director, Barbara Lopez, may give us a presentation. And I would encourage Council, unless there's something very pressing, maybe to wait until the presentation is done and we open up for citizens' comments, public hearing. And then after the public hearing, maybe we might be able to answer any questions at that time once those two elements are completed. So that being said, I'll turn over to Barbara Lopez for a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Good evening, Barbara Lopez, Finance Director. This is a public hearing regarding the revenues and 2024 property tax levy. So first, before we go any further, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a synopsis of where we've been and where we are right now. So back in July, I came to council with some initial revenue and expense projections. We talked through those. Over the course of July and September, city staff worked on preparing budget adjustment items for the city manager to consider. Those all went into a preliminary budget document that was provided to council in early October. And there were budget study sessions on that on October 10th and 11th, which leads us to where we are today, where we're having public hearings and first readings of our property tax and budget ordinances. Second reading for those is scheduled for November 21st, which is next week. So the action tonight on this particular item is number one, a public hearing on the revenue sources, including property taxes. And then there would be first reading of an ordinance that levies the property taxes for 24. And then there's a separate resolution to pass that states the 2024 property tax increase in terms of dollars and percentages. So it's three separate steps with this particular item. So this particular slide just basically shows our citywide revenues for the 2024 adopted as part of the biennial budget. We adopted revenue of $146 million. This adjustment is $3.3 million. The other intergovernmental piece of about 1.5 million are several grants that we're adding for capital projects. And then the transfers in of 1.8 are where we move monies around from one fund to another. And the vast majority of this is moving 1.6 of tier 3 monies into the budget stability reserves fund. So with those adjustments, total revenues for the 2024 mid-biennium are $149.5 million. Of that, the property tax levy is about $10.2 million. Sales tax is 27.9, and then we have a variety of charges for services and other revenues that we account for in there. The property tax levy itself, the calculation is shown. So we start with the 2023 levy amount. We added the 1% allowable increase, new construction that Pierce County allocates to us. And so the 2024 estimated levy is just over $10 million. One of the things to keep in mind is that we are still counting it as an estimated levy because if Pierce County has some final changes to make in those numbers, once we submit it, they will do that. That it's more in terms of additional, possibly a bit additional new construction or other adjustments that they would automatically do. So that $10 million of that estimated levy, that translates to just shy of $1 per 1,000 levy rate. Pierce County is now saying that the median value home here in the Puyallup area is just over $491,000. So it's come down a little bit. It was expected to come down some. And so the estimated cost on that median value home is about $490 for the year. I did also provide the 2023 levy rates off to the side that shows that the city's portion of property tax is typically about 11%. The 2024 comparison won't actually be available until after the first of the year, once all of the entities have their property tax levies in and calculated. And so that concludes my brief presentation. I'm happy to do this in any order that the mayor chooses.
Okay, great. Well, I think council, unless there's any pressing questions, I might open it up for public hearing, and then if there's any questions, we might entertain that after that, if that's okay with the council. I'd like to suggest that. So thank you, Barbara. At this time, I'd like to open it up for public hearing for citizens to comment specifically on this agenda item. And we'll allow 2 minutes for those to share. So I'll now open up the public meeting. And anybody that would like to speak to this particular issue? Okay, anybody online that would like to speak to this issue? We have some folks online. If you'd like to speak, please indicate by a hand or a thumbs up icon. I'll certainly call upon you. Okay. So the public meeting is closed. I don't see any comments on that. I'll open it up to council. Council, did you have any questions or thoughts concerning item 4A as before us today? Councilmember Castleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Not really as much of a question. Well, I guess I could phrase it in a question. Barbara, why do you do such a good job? No, what I mean by that is that over the last 7 years, the city of Puyallup has raised its property tax about 4.2%, compared to an inflation rate of 27%. We have done a very, I think, diligent job of holding the increases to a minimal amount. I mean, I'm very aware, cognizant of the fact that property values are going up, and we have to be very conscious of how much we increase the budget, because our people are hardworking, average people who get out there and they want good value. We are a fairly unique city in that we actually collect more funds in sales tax than we do property tax. We're very fortunate to have auto dealers. We're very fortunate to have big retailers like the South Hill Mall. And that's been very, very good. It's allowed us to afford 18 excellent parks in our city. It's allowed us to have a police force that is second to none. It's very, very good. Police response time of 3.5 minutes. And that's one of the best response times of any police force at comparable cities, I would say, in the state of Washington, and maybe even beyond that. So I just want to make that statement, because we could just, pass this very quickly. But I think the people of Puyallup also, I do want to add this one point before I sign off, and that is that of your entire property tax bill, I think people need to know this, only 11% of that bill, only 11% of that goes to the city. That's it. And that, again, pays for all your police service, pays for the jail, pays for your library, pays for your senior center, pays for 18 parks, pays for all of your streets, all your maintenance, all of that is paid for out of that 11%. And I think people have at times a misperception of how much of that property tax actually we up here And I understand people are upset because I think there are other entities out there that aren't as conscious of those increases as we are here in the city of Puyallup. We are where the rubber meets the road. We are the front lines. And I do believe in all my experience that this is where the greatest efficiencies are had. So I just want to say that before we pass this, that thank you, Barbara, for the job that you do.
Thank you, Councilmember Castleman. I'd like to digress on that. I'm trying to see if I should exercise self-control on that. And I think I will. But I certainly was want to digress on that and talk to the city attorney about that. But I think I'm going to hold back on that. Maybe have a conversation offline. Okay. So any other comments, council? If not, city manager, there's a couple of steps to this. Oh, deputy mayor.
Yeah, I just had to jump in.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
I look at this from a financial standpoint, and we don't have the numbers here, but in terms of how much of our general fund comes in through property taxes is a relatively small percentage, and we depend heavily, as my colleague Councilmember Castema pointed out, on our sales tax, and that's great as long as the economy is chugging along, but it ends up exposing us to some degree if the economy goes into a serious recession, and it puts us in a position where we may really have to cut some services. So this is something I think about a lot. It's we're not going to change the general landscape. Barbara, do you know what the percentage of our general fund that off the top of your head that comes out of property taxes? I forget the
I
number.
believe it's around 18. I would need to go grab my other
Yeah.
book and look that up.
So anyway, even that sounds high to me, but it causes me some concern, and I lose a little bit of sleep on it. I'm a bad sleeper anyway. So I just wanted to express that to my colleagues and express that concern. I don't propose that we do anything different tonight, but our dependence on our sales tax, I would like to see a more balanced thing between sales tax and property tax, and a lot of jurisdictions have income tax as well, so that they talk about a three-legged stool: property tax, sales tax, and income tax. I'd love to be able to reduce the sales tax and increase property taxes, but that isn't something we can really do. But that's, again, I express that concern for what it's worth, and I move approval. No, it's first reading, sorry. So anyway, if nobody else has a comment, I jumped in at the last minute, so I'll move approval.
Okay.
I'll second that, but I do have a comment.
Yeah, please. Councilor, yeah,
Yeah, so I say this every time, so I might as well say it this time.
sure.
I share Deputy Whitting's comments on this in terms of the proportionality of the property tax versus the sales tax. It's almost 3 to 1 in terms of reliance on our sales tax. The problem is just kind of worse every year because our sales tax goes up on generally 3% every year. We've capped our property tax at 1% and sometimes froze it. So it's just continuing to get worse in terms of the change every single year. So I think the 1%, which we're doing tonight, it's not even keeping up. So it's at least 1% in my view. And so, and that's very conservative. So there you go.
Thank you. All right, Council, I'm going to defer to our city manager and our city attorney. Apparently there's 2 steps to this. Could you please guide us through the process on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. The first motion should be to approve the resolution that is levying the 1%. So that would be the first motion, and then assuming that's approved, then the next motion would be approval of the ordinance that sets the actual total levy amount. So resolution first, and then ordinance second.
Okay,
Obviously, I was smart enough to move that we do the resolution first.
okay. All right, so we have a motion to approve the resolution. If we have a second on that.
I did.
Okay, you did. Thank you for that. You're right. So council, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution as indicated and described in 4A. All those in support of that signify by saying aye,
Aye.
and those opposed nay. Okay, motion passes. Second, we might entertain a motion to approve the ordinance as signified in 4A.
I'll move that one too.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the ordinance in 4A as indicated. Those in favor signify by saying aye,
Aye.
and those opposed nay. Motion passes. Thank you. Councilor, we're going to move on to 4B. This is a public hearing and first reading of ordinance to the proposed 2024 mid-biennium adjustment to the 2023-24 biennial budget. I understand that our finance director, Barbara Wolpath, will give a short presentation on this. And then at that time, council, with your acceptance, I'd like to open it up to public hearing. And then after that, we'll take any questions or thoughts after the public hearing.
Right, thank you again. Tonight, this next one is specifically about adopting the mid-biennium adjustment. So the action tonight is the public hearing on that adjustment and then first reading of the ordinance approving the adjustment. So the total expenditure budget that was actually passed with the 24 adopted budget that was adopted as part of the biennial budget was $148.8 million. When we came to you in October with the preliminary adjustments that we had and talked through all of those are what's listed in the right-hand column or the left-hand column under preliminary adjustments that are just shy of $4 million. Those were items such as changes to our labor matrix, our salaries and benefits based on things that were going on. The $1.6 million transfer of tier 3 monies out of the general fund and into budget stability. We added about $1.8 million of capital projects, primarily funded through grants that we've received. And then there was staffing additions of just over $24,000. So that made up the initial $4 million adjustment. After the budget study sessions, we went back and we also needed to just update the lodging tax. When we did the 23-24 biennial budget, we put a placeholder in for 24. So the first thing that we needed to do was actually true that up to what the actual amount was for 2024, which is the $185,390. That just got us to the 45% of last year's revenues. Then through the process, we had $150,000 of city initiated items, which is the art purchase and tourism branding. So we needed to add those dollars in there. And then based on feedback at the budget study sessions, there was conversation about adding the $13,750 additional LTAC allocation that was the gap that was needed to basically give those who made requests that we could fund all of the requests. So adding all of those in, the total for the mid biennium of 2024 is $153 million, just over that. So the staffing additions, just as a reminder, one was to convert the community court case manager from a 0.75 FTE to a 1.0 FTE. The cost on that is just over $24,000, but it will be reimbursed by a state grant. So it's a net no cost to the city. The other staffing addition was an engineering contract specialist. The total cost of that position is $145,000, which will be offset by charging time to utility funded projects. So both have a net zero cost to the city. And then lastly, this shows the LTAC updates. So there's a column, the third from the right column, 2024 LTAC updated. basically that updates the Puyallup Main Street Association and adds the 13,750 to make them whole with what they asked for. By doing that, we were able to fully fund what each organization asked for. Down at the bottom, it also shows the city funded or the city initiated items. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a mixed few items in there. So if we'll open it up for at this time for public hearing and citizens' comments on specifically items to and pertaining to this 4B. So at this time, I'll open up public hearing. Those who would like to speak to that. Okay, those online that would like to speak to that, please indicate it by indicating a hand raised or thumbs up. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Now, council, we'll move on to discussion on this. Looks like there's quite a few items that were kind of tagged into this. And one of them was the LTAC, which I think some of us had indicated some thoughts on this to tee it up to be added with some of these items. I still have some concerns on the LTAC that I'm not comfortable with. Again, as we look at the 2024 requests, I would like to remind council and the public, this is a request. It's not a guarantee. So whatever you ask for doesn't necessarily mean you get it. And so I'm concerned that the LTAC discussed this, made a decision, and now we're kind of overriding that. I'm concerned with some precedents here for a significant small amount that might create some concern in the future. So I would just remind us to consider that before we plow forward on this. I'll open up for discussion. And Councilmember Castleman.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that is what I wish to speak to, actually. I guess serendipitously, that is what I am concerned about too. And I think that procedurally we made some incorrect steps last time, that I think there are some ways we can deal with this in a procedural manner that doesn't set a bad precedent for the future. And by that, I mean, we had a recipient, a very worthy recipient, who does receive money from LTAC. We as a council allow LTAC to give us a recommendation on how to utilize these funds. And the procedure that we have been using for years, and I've used it in the past, I used it on the Fred Oldfield Museum, is that if you disagree with one of the expenses that they have allocated for, we have to turn it all back over to them. We can't just choose one item or the other and make a decision ourselves on what to fund or what is to fund and what not to fund. And that is how we have set up the procedure for years. And now we broke that precedent. We said if someone doesn't get what they want, and maybe even if they didn't get what they want, maybe new information came forward, that we will now make a decision from the dais and selectively use our funds, LTAC funds, or whatever the case is, and then pay for those, kind of usurping the whole purpose of LTAC. And again, the precedent is not a good one. When we set up committees to make recommendations to us, our procedure has been, again, if we disagree, we turn them all back over to LTAC. We let them go ahead and decide how they're going to reallocate. And we let them, if they disagree with us, they can give it back to us and say, sorry, our rationale was correct. Or they could say, you're right, we made a miscalculation because of new information, and they bring it back forward. But that's the procedure we have done. We have broken that. And I think there could be very negative repercussions on everything from appointments that we get from various committees to other allocations of like what we give to social service organizations. If one of those organizations doesn't get what they want, all they have to do is come directly to us and say, fund us anyway, even though we didn't qualify through that entire process. So my solution is this. My solution is we just adhere to the process. If it's true, as we heard in the last budget meeting, that new information has come to light that you think would warrant them receiving $13,750, well, we should remand it back to LTAC, ask for reconsideration, and ask them to take into account all the new information and let them give us their recommendations, see what they come up with. That's what I would do. And I would like to amend this, that we in fact do that. We just send it back to LTAC, ask for reconsideration based on the latest information, let them reconsider it and come back with it to us with a recommendation. So that's an amendment I'd like to put on this. And I may not have done that as gracefully as I can, but I do believe you understand what that amendment is. Am I correct?
Okay. So in this proceed amendment, do we need a second on this, city attorney?
A motion to amend would need a second.
Okay.
But I want to point out, you don't actually have a motion on the table. So
Okay, I'll wait and then I'll make the motion when it is on the table.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. This time I'll turn it over to Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to understand, Barbara. So we got an updated amount of 13,750 in the LTAC. Is that the new information essentially?
So we did two things with LTAC since we talked to you in October.
Okay.
Number one, we needed to bring it up to the 741.50. Because when we did the 23-24 budget, we had only budgeted at the 23 level, which was only like $500 and some $1,000. So we at least needed to bring the budget up to the 45% of the revenues. So that was the 185,390. We also needed to add the city initiated items to that. And then, yes, based on feedback that we had heard or thought we heard at the October budget study sessions, we added an additional 13,750 out of LTAC monies to allocate towards making to the Main Street Association, which meant with that it was 45.8% of revenues that got allocated through that process instead of just 45%. If that makes sense.
I'm not sure I followed everything, but I mean, what happened, my understanding, at the LTAC is everybody got what they requested except for Main Street, and they were the one that took the haircut for the amount that was available when they discussed it, right? And so, since I think you're saying that we have some available money to fill that gap now, to meet that gap.
So it's whether council wants to work outside of their normal policy. Normal policy is that it's 45% of the revenues that goes to the LTAC
Oh, I see.
to allocate out. That's the $71,050 or $741,050
Okay.
that we first allocated, which was 13,750 short from actually fully funding all of the requests that we had. So it would be council deciding to do something slightly different than their normal policy of 45%
I understand.
to do that.
I understand. Okay, well, so last time I know I expressed that, I mean, my memory is so lost these days, but can't remember from one meeting to the next, but, you know, there was concerns because Main Street was having some additional costs with respect to maker days, and they had to absorb that. And so so their increase actually wasn't, they really needed that increase just to maintain the services for maker days. And so that was a tough place to make the one cut. And so since everybody else in this unique situation, everybody got what they wanted except for a little bit from Main Street. And so if $13,000 fixes that in this situation, this isn't like previous years where everybody got like a little, slightly less than they requested, and there was some juggling. Everybody got what they asked for in this particular request, except for Main Street. This is a very small adjustment. I'm very comfortable with this. This doesn't seem like something that has to go back to LTAC, given the facts. If it was a more complicated formula, yeah, but I think if it's gonna go back to LTAC, they had 13,750. Why wouldn't they just add it into the one place that they cut? And instead of saying, well, no, we're gonna take that and put 5 over here more than anybody else requested. That's not gonna happen. So the only outcome here is to make Main Street whole, which makes sense because they're running higher costs for maker days. So I support what's in front of us completely. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
It's good to be here tonight.
Yeah.
Happy to be alive. And I agree completely with Councilmember Palmer. I really hate to say that out loud, but I really do agree 100%.
Okay.
Because that's how I recall. So here's the deal. I understand that this is outside kind of our policy, but it seems to me that what staff is trying to do is we all kind of agreed that Main Street was going to have some one-off purchases this year because of some reason that I don't remember. My brain is the same as Councilmember Palmer's, so I don't recall why, but it was some one-off expenses, and I think Councilmember Palmer makes a really great argument. The thing is that in this case, it's a no-brainer because Main Street was the one to get a haircut. I like that phrase. And it seems to me that staff is taking some initiative to put this in place for us so we don't have to keep going back and forth. And while I think, it's outside what we normally do, it makes common sense to do what staff did. And so I think, in my view, I'm not going to support going back to LTAC because when do we have to have this done? What's the cutoff? Is it November or is it December?
Well, we need to have a budget adopted by the end of the year. And so there's only 2 more meetings left already scheduled this year. Second reading is supposed to be next week. Pretty sure that we're not going to be able to convene. Well, maybe we could. I don't know that we can convene the LTAC before next week.
And it's not a huge amount of money. And so I really think that we should go with what we've got. And I realize that's a little bit uncomfortable, but sometimes you just have to support the common sense that's coming to us rather than the process. Sometimes process is important. In this case, I don't think that we're going to cheat anybody by what staff is proposing. So thank you very much, Barbara.
Okay. Yes, you're welcome. Deputy Mayor, do you mind if I go to Deputy Mayor because he hasn't spoken yet? Deputy Mayor.
Wasn't quite ready.
Oh, well, actually, if you don't mind, I'll go to Councilmember Dorr if she's ready.
Sure, go ahead.
I am.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So LTAC makes a recommendation. They're an advisory board to the council. Final decision rests with the council. After watching the LTAC meeting, I do have some concerns about the way in which this was approached. And as a general rule, how it has, everybody gets a very minor haircut when we're on something like this. Not one entity just takes the whole brunt of a deficit in the funds. It was my understanding, and I could be wrong, that we suggested in October that it wasn't LTAC funding, that it was tier 3 that we were going to make up the difference. Please, and I'm assuming since Deputy Mayor, I don't know why I feel like he's going to correct me if that's incorrect. But as far as what the changes were, is it that in the past, a lot of their the things that they were using for Meeker Days were provided by the fair. The fair used to have 3 graduations and now they have 11. And so those different electrical things, I can't speak to all of the different needs, but they are going to have, some expenses that they didn't have previously. This council or an iteration did at one point put out Meeker Days for an RFP and was concerned about Meeker Days. And I think that, they have shown that they do a good job and everybody supported that, but we certainly want to make sure they have the resources that they need to continue to provide that level of an event. So I concur with council members Palmer and Ferris that whether it's tier 3 or we add the additional here, I think that it's warranted in this case. Thank you.
Okay. We're talking using the verbiage haircut. I'm just gonna go ahead and insert, sometimes haircuts are different for different entities. If you look back at the 22 award versus the 23 award, just using for example, the chamber got a $14,000 haircut and the Main Street only got a $3,000 haircut. Now, why didn't that institution say, hey, how come we got cut 14,000, you only got 3? And then of course you go to the arts or the arts downtown, they got another $3,000 haircut. So I mean, you're going to have some variances. At the end of the day, when you look though at what was requested, again, it was, as the council member mentioned, she's correct that the LTAC is a recommendation, but the organization is also a request. It's not a guarantee. So all these things are recommendation requests, but ultimately the buck stops with the council to decide to either adopt or change. When you look at the haircut, you are correct. Even with the haircut, as we refer to, the Main Street still came out with the largest hair growth of anybody else over last year, 55,000. Even with the haircut, they still got $55,000. So again, I just have to remind council and the public that there's no unfair situation here. They got the highest amount dollar-wise over last year. Correct, they did get a haircut, but it's still, if you're going to go back how many years and say, heck, that was unproportionate, it's just not right. So this is where we're here now. Let's move it forward. I'm concerned with sending it back to the LTAC, but if council wants to do that, that's fine. I also disagree with the proposed changes to grant this for precedence for 13,700, but I'll go with the will of the council, whatever you decide. But to me, this doesn't seem comfortable or appropriate or proper precedence for years past. Where do we open the books and go back and reevaluate those? I don't know. So I'll turn it over to at this point, Deputy Mayor.
Okay, I'll try to weave everybody's comments in here. And Councilmember Dorr did a good job of talking about the fair having to not being able to provide some of the services that they had historically provided to help with Meeker Days, which puts Main Street Association in a difficult position. So they're asking for additional funds. So again, the budgetary situation, the logistics were such that there was some shortfalls there. And Puyallup Main Street Association does a wonderful job on Meeker Days and a number of our other city functions. So I want to support them any way I can. But you submit applications, and I'm on the community grants committee, and there's folks that we don't generally 100% fund it, the requests in that context. So I'm not afraid to tell people that they're not going to get quite as much money as they requested. And in this situation, the Puyallup Main Street has an extraordinary situation here that I think deserves further consideration. But I'm with Councilmember Castleman in that I don't think we want to change our process, particularly because we've got a tight budget year. And I think we just need to start thinking a little more economically. And even though this is only a $13,750 item, if we think that we can just go ahead and take that out of our own pockets to pay for something, I think we need to be a little more fiscally prudent this year than that. If we had a lot of tier 3 money, we expected a lot of tier 3 money to come in, then, I think we can afford to put aside the frugality, but this isn't one of those years. So I think from a process standpoint, it's a bad example, and from a frugality standpoint, I think it's a bad example. So I'm not supporting the 13 funding the 13,750 out of our own pockets. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn that over to Steve. Did you have some comments?
Just wanted to mention that when it comes to LTAC recommendations, and I think this has been briefly talked about by a couple council members here today, is that if the amounts are changed from the recommendations, which council has the authority to do, by the way, ultimately that is a budgetary decision that council has the decision, and you're having the debate right now. But ultimately, if the amounts that they recommended are different, we still have to take it back to them for comment. Ultimately, you as the council make the final decision. So if this does go forward today with the $13,000, the difference from the recommendations, this would go back to the LTAC committee for comment. Then it would come back again to council at final adoption, and you all would have the final say.
Okay. So it sounds like it's going back anyway, just a matter of how it goes back in terms of send the whole thing back and renegotiate, or we send it back to them and say, here's where we're going. You need to at least be briefed as a cordial process.
It only goes back for comment if you make any changes to their recommendations.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Do you mind if I have Councilmember King comment?
Not at all.
Before you jump in, since he hasn't commented yet. Councilmember King, would you like to jump in here?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you putting all this stuff together. And as one of my colleagues said earlier, why are you so good? So I appreciate all of this information. I do have a little bit of concern of the precedents that this sets. Do I believe that they deserve every penny that they request because they do such a good job? Yes, but it's the precedents, it's the procedure, it's the way we're going about it. And, all this about the fair and budgets and everything else. I understand that there are some shortfalls, but I also believe that we as a council need to follow our standard procedures and policies that we have in place. And I know that it ultimately comes back to us. But we all have to look forward to a haircut. Well, most of us. Razors are cheaper. And yes, that was a bald joke, and I'm okay with you laughing. But we all have to look at what we're doing here. And I think the most important thing is to make sure that we are not setting us up for failure in the future with our policies and procedures that we're setting a precedence for. So although I am very supportive of the Puyallup Main Street Association and all that they do, I think that we need to follow our current procedure. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Castema.
I am not going to argue the merits at all of whether, and I think that that's not what we should be doing here, is arguing the merits of whether they deserve the $13,750. I'm only arguing this from a procedural perspective, is that we allow these committees to give us recommendations. But in the past, our procedure has been, if we disagree with those recommendations, we send it back to them and we say, we don't agree with them. These are our concerns. Now go ahead and fix that. In this case, they can only allocate so much money. If we say, go back, reconsider under these new factors, they will go ahead and come in with the correct budget amount, but maybe that $15,000, excuse me, the $13,750 will be reallocated, the negative side of that, with many different programs. But that's their decision to make. And that's what we have done in the past. I am really concerned about us now. If any organization out there, community grants or whatever it is, they don't get what they want when they go to those particular committees, they will lobby us. They will come to us and say, we want you to take it out of tier 3. We want you to take it out of LTAC. We want you to take it out of the general fund, whatever the case may be. And I think that's a bad precedent to set. But I'll tell you, if we do set that precedent, then if members on this committee decide that they want to change appointments and not send it back, that will be permissible based on this precedent that we're setting here today. And again, Councilmember Dorr, I do understand that they give us recommendations, but the procedure and the methodology we have always used is that we say, we disagree, we can send it back to them with those disagreements. And true, we are the ultimate deciders on that, but let's just say we send it back to LTAC and they say, no, we did re-examine everything. And these are our justifications for, let's say, giving them $5,000, not $13,750, and then reallocating those deficits with someone else. Let them make that decision and come back with the justification. But that's how I always saw this procedure as taking place. And I think it's healthy that way. Otherwise, all of these committees that we establish out there to vet through all of those applications, all of those resumes, everything, now that can just be bypassed. And why not just come to us? Because the precedent will be, by the way, is that they'll be able to do that. And if I want to break precedent, I can come up with rationale, believe me. I can come up with rationale of how that case is unique and how that we should make those decisions. And all I ask is that we pay deference to what will happen in the future and be very careful by what we do. That's all. I think if we send it back there with our concerns, we'll see what they do. They will reallocate the funds, but they'll come in at the amount that they're supposed to come in at. And then again, that sets the precedence so that in the future, councils don't constantly pad all the applications that they may get that they decide not to fund.
Mm-hmm.
That's all my point is. I think it's good governance. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to Councilmember Palmer's question, staff. So before us, we have at least 2 options and maybe 3 options. And so one option could be to accept the first reading of the ordinance as before us in 4A. That's option 1. Option 2 is to amend it as Councilor Castema has suggested as a possible amendment to that, to say, hey, listen, send this back to LTAC, let them reevaluate and come back with a new recommendation. But isn't there a third option? If council wanted to, they could actually take and amend this and say, we want to accept the original LTAC funding that was there and be done with it tonight. That is a possibility. So I'd like to entertain a thought to council that we maybe consider the third option, which is to accept what the LTAC committee has already suggested and bypass it and not further delay and cause duration in this thing. That's a thought too. So we have 3 options before us. Councilmember Palmer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really don't think we're breaching any protocol here. I really don't. We've done this type of thing in the past. So we have a situation where the amount of money that we had, everybody got it except for one. So one entity took the haircut. Those are the facts. And in our judgment, based on understanding the situation that Main Street is in, we say, okay, it's only $13,000 to make it whole for everyone. We'll add some more LTAC to that. The process is it goes back to LTAC for comment. Those are the rules. So we're just following the rules. We can do that easily. So I don't think this is not at all breaching any process I see, especially considering the facts that occurred. And then in terms of budget, what is our balance on LTAC at the end of this year and at end of the budget or whatever?
So the allocation for 2024 is based on 2022 revenues. So there was about $1.6 million that came in. We're spending about 900 here. And so that leaves about 600,000.
600,000. Okay. So that's 600,000 kind of carryover for, and LTAC funds kind of can build up.
Yes.
So, that's what we did for the sports field. So this is kind of a fund that builds over time. And right now we've got a balance after spending, you said, about $600,000.
Yes.
So I think using 13,000 of that is trivial from a budget standpoint. Doesn't affect our overall budget, has nothing to do with that. It has to do with future LTAC projects that the city might do. I think the 13,000 is trivial. So process wise, I don't think we're making any fouls here at all. And budget wise, I think we're solid. Doesn't make any difference. So I don't see why we wouldn't want to make Main Street, which requested more to make up for the fare problem. I just don't see why we wouldn't do that. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, Council, Councilmember Dorr, please. Yeah.
Thank you. So when we went into the October budget session, I recommended one of two things. Either send it back to LTAC for recommendation, or that we find another way to make them whole. And so at that point, there were 4 people that said they supported making them whole. They didn't want to send it back to LTAC. But I do agree on the precedent. And there's other things. We've had people come and lobby us, encouraged by council, to come to a meeting and lobby for funding. So this is not, and Main Street is not before you or us lobbying here. They do have to go back, but I would encourage you to watch the LTAC meeting. And I think that if there was going to be a haircut, it generally has been just everybody takes a little percentage and no one agency is impacted. And here it was one agency that took the whole amount. So I agree with Councilmember Palmer. It is not, we've done this before. It's not a problem. LTAC is going to have, it has to go back to LTAC for a further comment if we're not using tier 3. And like I said, and I couldn't remember how that discussion went, if that was what we had decided in October was potentially tier 3 or not. So I may have been misunderstood on that part. But anyway, it does have to go back to LTAC regardless. Thank you.
Okay. So, Councilmember Dorr, you bring up a good point. I'm even wondering, does Main Street even care? Do they even want this? Because as chair of the LTAC committee, I haven't heard from Main Street directly and asking me to consider this. I've just heard through a couple of council members. So I'm even wondering, are we actually asking for something that they don't even necessarily want? I haven't heard from the director or from the board. So maybe I'm missing something. Maybe are we over concerned about something that is not even a concern for them? I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, I would say that I have heard from them.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is they're not before you tonight asking you to make a consideration, but I have heard from them. Yeah. And at the last meeting, we had a member of the board that was present and although he didn't make public comment, made his concerns known.
Yeah. Well, as chair of the board, I haven't heard from anybody from that. So it's all assumption. And I trust that you've perhaps have heard from them. But it seems odd that the step has been skipped if you don't go to the chair and say, hey, listen, we're concerned with that and bring it up. So I'm hearing secondhand hearsay. That's why I'm just asking the question. Are they even interested in this? I don't know. Okay, Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know you had three options, but what it seems like is going to go back to LTAC. And there is some money that we could put in to give them what they requested. So, I mean, the only thing that seems to be we need to identify today is if we're going to take it back to LTAC with this extra money to give them the option or not. So if they don't want it or they make a recommendation that says no, then it's a done deal. But I think what we should do is just give you enough information of what council wants so that you can present that or at least talk to them about it at the LTAC meeting. So and it seems to me that there was quite a bit of support for making them whole at the budget meeting. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. Is if it's got to go back, then the process argument really isn't there because it's going to take you're going to do the process the way it's intended. So do we want to give this money up to see if they want it or not? But then that's the LTAC. So then it's less complicated later, is all I'm saying. Hopefully that makes sense. It makes sense in my head. Anyway, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. I was just going to make a comment. We do have three choices. Like I mentioned, I want to reiterate that, council. And if there's some strong leadership, we can make this happen tonight. We can accept it as stated here before us in 4B, leave it alone, allocate the extra percentage, break the precedent, be done with it. Or we can send it back and we can rehash it. And I'm concerned with that. And I'll be just very frank with you. If we go back,
It's not a rehash, it's just a comment.
no, we can send it back and say, hey, we want to stick with the $441,050, reallocate and get everyone even haircuts. We could go back with that, right? And
No, I mean, this proposal, I'm sorry, this proposal says we're just going to add $13,000 to make everybody.
That would be option one.
And then it would go back to LTAC and say, do you have a problem with that?
Right, that would be option one.
That's
But option two could go back and say, no, reallocate under the same format, but give everyone even haircuts and divide that up. I'm concerned with that because then it's already been approved by LTAC and it was overwhelming. There was only one entity that voted against it. The rest of it was.
No one's suggesting that.
Yeah.
No one has suggested that you try to reallocate the haircut.
Okay, so that's not, okay, all right. Or the third option is we just abide by the LTAC tonight and be done with it and not drag this out and try and pull the nail out later. So that's a thought. So Steve, you had some comment.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify, and perhaps I wasn't clear earlier, so I just want to clarify. It goes back to LTAC for comment if council changes the recommendation. If council does not change the recommendation, it does not go back. If council does change it, it goes back for comment, but ultimately you all make the final decision. Just wanted to make sure that was understood.
Is there a motion on the table? I move to was it first reading? Move first
Yes.
reading under 4B as proposed.
Okay, we have a first motion and a second. Council, any discussion or thoughts? I'll open up for discussion. Councilmember Castema.
Mr. Mayor, I move an amendment to that would send back the 13,500 to LTAC. Or excuse me, that would send back the entire slate to LTAC and ask them to more equitably distribute the 13,500 $13,750 deficit and remain within budget for LTAC for this upcoming budget.
So in other words, remain in the allocation of $741.50, right? Is that
That's correct.
right?
And
With no add-ons.
with no add-ons and a more equitable redistribution of that $13,750 cut.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. City attorney, help us. Help me with we got a motion and a second. We have an amendment with a motion and a second. Do we vote on the amendment first? Is that correct?
You debate and vote on the amendment by itself, and then depending on how that goes, you go back to
Okay.
the main question.
So council, we have a first and a second on the amendment. We'll open up for discussion for Councilmember Palmer and others who would like to speak to the amendment before we vote on that. Councilmember Palmer.
Oh, thank you. I'm not going to support it because I'm going to see if the original motion will pass. If the original motion does not pass, then I would consider what Councilmember Castleman said.
It doesn't work that way.
Well,
You can't work that way. Mine is amendment to yours. It doesn't work the other way around. Once yours passes, my amendment is not.
okay, well, I'm just informing the council then that I would support that if the original, I will vote against this, your amendment. But I mean, I don't think it's worth it for this amount. I understand what you're saying in terms of principles sticking to that particular number. In this case, we have added on in the past with LTAC. We have done that. We've added. We've done it.
I've never seen it.
Maybe it was done before you, but we've looked at the projects and say, well, let's, we started there, we could, but I understand your principle. I do. I really do. I just think under these circumstances, 13,000 is probably not worth worrying about. But if we want to do it the way you want as described, I'm okay with that, but I'm going to vote no initially.
Okay, just for clarity, Barbara, as I understand the amendment that Councilmember Castleman has stated, if the amendment passes, it will go back to the LTAC to reallocate the proportion of funding that would equal $741,050, right? Is that correct?
That's correct. And I just also want to clarify that we would then take that 13,750 out of the proposed budget amendment adjustment here for second reading.
Right. Okay. All right. All right. So we have a motion and a second on the amendment. We'll call for the vote on that and then see where that lands and go into the second one. So all those in favor of the amendment as stated by Councilmember Castleman and seconded by Councilmember King signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
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 So the motion, the amendment passes. Now at this point, we make a motion on the amended initial motion that Councilmember Castleman has or Councilmember Palmer has started. Yeah, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any discussion on this before we call for the vote on that amendment? Okay, or on that motion. So those in favor of the amendment and now motion as stated before signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Can we do a count on that to make sure? I think there was just. Was there 6-1? Is that what you got?
I'm sorry, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry to interrupt. So I voted no on the amendment. The amendment passed.
Amendment passed. Now we're on
So
the motion.
Amendment is actually now the motion.
It's amended the motion.
I hate Robert's rules of law.
So did it pass 6-1?
I think so.
6-1. Okay, it passed 6-1. Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't.
All right, we got there, council. Thank you for that lively discussion. Now we're going to move on to 4C. We have a public hearing and first reading of an ordinance to amend the PMC 3.70 property tax incentives in residential targeted areas, also known as the multifamily tax exemption program. I understand Rachel Brown, our associate planner, may have a presentation that she may want to share with us. And so if that's the case, I'll open it up to her.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council, Rachel Brown, Associate Planner here at the City of Puyallup. So I'm here with a presentation bringing you the public hearing and first reading of the multifamily tax exemption expansion. So as I mentioned, tonight is the public hearing and first reading of ordinance to put into effect the changes to the multifamily tax exemption program that I presented to you. I think it was last month. So tonight, this presentation is going to go through briefly Puyyallup's housing challenges. That was kind of the impetus for taking a look at our existing program and expanding it. We'll take a look at what the MFT program is. We'll briefly review what City Council's original direction was in terms of expanding this program. We'll run through the Planning Commission review process that we went through. And then we'll take a look at the actual proposed changes that are before you in that ordinance. So we'll look at the policy changes that are proposed, a little analysis of some potential fiscal impacts, and then the proposed revisions to the MFT applicability area. And then we'll review what tonight's council action could be, and then we'll go over next steps. So to start with, this is a graph you guys have seen before. This is taken from Puyallup's own housing action plan. And it just describes some of the housing challenges that Puyallup is facing today. So according to our housing action plan, housing costs in Puyallup are rising much faster than incomes. Households across the income spectrum are affected by our lack of diverse and affordable housing options. According to our latest data on the pace of housing construction, we anticipate that we will not meet our projected needed number of housing units by our estimated population in 2044. We believe by that date, we will have an approximate deficit of almost 4,000 dwelling units based on the projections of population growth by 2044. All right, so what is the MFT program and how could it help? MFT stands for Multifamily Tax Exemption Program. It is intended to provide opportunities for cities and counties to encourage development of multifamily housing in certain areas. It's a voluntary program, so it's voluntary for the city to have the program, and it's also voluntary for developers to participate in the program. Only properties and projects that are located in what's called a residential target area, or RTA, are eligible to apply for the tax exemption. And cities decide where the RTA is located in their city. And then cities also decide what their menu looks like. So they can offer an 8, a 12, or a 20-year tax exemption. And each of these tax exemptions has different requirements for public benefits, such as affordable housing. And the city of Puyallup already has an MFT program. We've had one since 2003, and our program is codified in PMC Chapter 3. So how does this tax exemption work? So the tax exemption is an exemption from property taxes. Our property taxes are chunked out into different taxes allocations based on land taxes and improvement taxes. So for the MFT program, not all property taxes are exempted, only a portion of them, specifically land taxes. So the land itself is not exempted. Commercial improvements, so a commercial building or a portion of a building that is commercial use, is also not exempted. The only exemption that qualifies is residential improvements of a property. So that is the dwelling units that are residential themselves. That is what the exemption provides. And as I mentioned, the city of Puyallup already has a program. And that program currently applies to generally a portion of the downtown, a portion of our downtown regional growth center. And that is shown on this map in yellow. And then last month, I came to the City Council and presented on proposed expansion of this existing what's called residential target area, essentially the applicability area of this program. And City Council took a look at that and was interested in expanding it to a larger portion of the downtown and South Hill. But there's also some interest in expanding it actually to also the Riverboard Corridor. So based on the resolution that was voted on and signed, this would be potentially what would be adopted and what is before you in that ordinance. And we'll get more into detail about what this this map actually looks like and what each of the colors means in a little bit. So as I mentioned, our MFT program provides a menu of options, and a city has some flexibility in what that menu looks like. So the city's current menu offers two options, an 8-year and a 12-year program. And the year designation indicates how long a project has their tax exemption for. So for the 8-year program, that means that a qualifying project would be allowed to have a tax exemption for 8 consecutive years. The general intention of this program is to increase market rate housing. And the reason for that is that the only current requirement and the only minimum requirement for this tax exemption is that the project be located in that residential target area. And it has no other requirement for affordable housing. Contrasted with the 12-year program, this program, in exchange for a couple extra years of tax exemption, the project has to provide a minimum of 20% of the total units that are built need to be offered at affordable rental rates or owner-occupied rates to low or moderate income households. And this program is generally thought to be intended to provide temporary affordable housing. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. So what does affordable to low and moderate income housing mean? So low income, according to the statute, means less than or equal to 80% area median income. And that's shown on this graphic in blue. And moderate income, shown on this graphic in yellow, means 80 to 115% area median income. So knowing that we already have a program and that that program had not had a whole lot of participation since it had been enacted in 2003, there was interest from the community and from City Council and taking a look at the program and asking if there were some changes that maybe needed to be made to the program, possibly looking at expanding where it was applicable in the city to meet more of the city's housing goals. So City Council gave some direction to staff to that end. City Council asked staff to take a look at expanding the program to a larger portion of the downtown regional growth center, possibly even looking at areas outside of the downtown, maybe to areas south and east of the Washington State Fair, SR 512, areas to East Main, to 15th Street. You guys did ask about possibly looking at River Road corridor, and there was some interest in looking at the South Hill Regional Growth Center as well, with possibilities looking at the whole regional growth center in South Hill, or maybe just portions of it. There was even talk of maybe looking at expanding it to different corridors connecting our regional growth centers. And there was some interest in maybe doing incremental changes. So maybe looking at expanding the RTA a little bit now, and then looking towards the future of expanding it a little bit more, possibly during our comprehensive plan update. So with that direction in mind, we went to the Planning Commission. The MFT program is not technically under Planning Commission review, so we didn't go to them and have a public hearing, but we did want to have a chance to talk with the Planning Commission about what their thoughts were, especially since it's kind of a complicated program, and get their feedback. So we got council direction in September of 2022. We worked with the Planning Commission from October 2022 to June 2023. And then I circled back with City Council and presented what we had worked through with the Planning Commission in August. And then again with you guys in October. And now we're back here for a potential City Council final action. Okay, so now I'll go over what the actual changes are proposed in the ordinance before you. So this slide, I'm just going to go over kind of the more minor policy changes. These are items that were either required by state law or they're generally administrative in nature, like changing definitions and things like that. The numbering that's on here on the slide does correspond to the table that was in your packet, just so you can better follow along. And the table provides some more details about what those policy changes are intended to do. So number 5 in your table talks about a requirement to now provide relocation assistance for our 12-year program. That is now required by state law with some changes. A requirement to beef up our annual compliance review for reporting to the Department of Commerce. Some changes to the timing of application submittal just to make it easier for applicants. Some addition of some affordable unit standards, a limitation on some rental fees, the elimination of a loophole in the 12-year home ownership option, an addition of a contract amendment option, and again, and some definition updates. So now I'll get into kind of the bigger picture changes that we are looking at in this ordinance. So the first big picture changes have to do with the menu itself. So as I mentioned, our current menu, which is shown in this table in the columns in blue, is an 8-year and a 12-year exemption offer. Changes to state law now allow our city to potentially offer a 20-year exemption. But there are actually 2 programs offered under that state law. There's a program for renter occupied units and a separate program for owner occupied units. Our city does not currently qualify for the renter occupied program. We only qualify for the owner occupied program. So that is what is in the ordinance before you. And the owner occupied program allows the applicant to get 20 years of tax exemption in exchange for a requirement that they provide 25% of the units that they build and sell to be permanently affordable to low income households. The other item that we did discuss with Planning Commission, but they were split on, and is to possibly add an affordability requirement to the 8-year program, which, if you remember, does not currently have a requirement for affordability or for affordable units. This is not currently in the current version of the ordinance, and I'll get into the reasons why. But first, let's start with the 20-year homeownership option. So this is number 2 in the table that was provided in your packet. So our current policy is that our menu does not include a 20-year option in our menu. The proposed policy that is in the ordinance before you is to add that 20-year exemption for home ownership, because that's the only one we qualify for. The alternative policy would be to leave our menu as is. This is not a requirement by state law to add this. This is just an optional alternative to our menu that we could offer. So the opportunities and limitations that we see with this option is, I'll start with the opportunities. So we saw that the 20-year option requires construction of those affordable homeownership units in perpetuity. So it allows, or it enables the city to get permanent home ownership units for the life of the project, which could be 50 years or more, in exchange for only 20 years of investment. The other opportunity we saw was that the 20-year program facilitates the city's goal of providing more affordable housing options for its citizens, especially for providing more affordable home ownership options for residents. It also provided possibly more options for potential applicants to the MFT program. It's another option in the menu that may be a better fit for them, depending on what their goals are for their project. Some limitations we saw with this this option is it is 20 years of tax exemption. So that is significantly longer than the 8 or the 12 year. So it is foregone tax revenues for the city. And then a government or nonprofit agency has to be willing to sponsor that development. And that could be a barrier to people actually utilizing this menu option. So the next item we did discuss with Planning Commission was adding an affordability requirement to the 8-year menu item. This is number 3 in your table. So as I mentioned, our current policy is that we don't have an affordability requirement for the 8-year program. And we're not currently proposing any change to the existing 8-year program. Like I said, we did discuss as a planning commission, and we didn't really have a consensus from them. Some were interested in it, others weren't. And since we kind of had a split on that, we decided to not include it. An alternative would, of course, be to add it. City Council does have that authority to add an affordability requirement to this menu item. Some opportunities we saw with adding an affordability requirement would be that this would put more of a focus on the MFT program on affordability, while still providing flexibility to a potential applicant to choose from a menu of options. And it would add an additional public benefit in the form of those affordable units. The limitations that we saw with this option was that since the 8-year tax exemption was shorter than the 12 years, so it was only 8 years of tax exemption versus 12 years, the added requirement to the applicant or the developer of having to have affordable units and therefore foregoing the rents from those affordable units, we were concerned that in Puyallup's residential market may result in the 8-year program essentially not penciling for developers here. And for our program in particular that has not seen very much participation, we were concerned that if we added this requirement to the 8-year program, we may continue to not see participation in the long term. So that was ultimately why we didn't include it. And then there are some changes to our displacement policy. So displacement means it's an instance when a household is forced or pressured to move from their home against their will. So we currently do have a displacement policy in our MFT program. It requires 12 months of waiting. It's a 12-month waiting period if the site is occupied, and the waiting period starts once the site is vacated. So the applicant can't apply for the MFT program until that waiting period is done. It's pretty difficult to administer, and it doesn't really provide options for the applicant to forego delays in construction of the new project, or provide housing to potentially displaced tenants or help them with displacement. So working with the Planning Commission, the proposed policy seemed to be a better fit. And this is a policy that we got inspiration from other cities. So this policy would replace our current policy and instead provide for a 120 calendar day move notice to the tenants. It would provide displaced tenants with housing of comparable size, quality, and price. And then if any displaced tenants qualify as low income, then the applicant would provide them with help with moving expenses. And then the displaced tenants would be offered the first right of refusal for the newly constructed units once they came online. So we don't have a requirement to change this displacement policy. We do have a current policy. We could leave it as is. So that's the alternative policy option for that. Okay, to the fiscal impacts. So City Council was interested in learning more about what the potential fiscal impacts could be of expanding this program. I'm not an economist, but I did work with Barbara Lopez to kind of get what information we could to address this question. And so what we ended up doing was basically imagining a imaginary MFT project that was very big. It had the longest exemption possible, which is 20 years. So we imagined if we had built a very large project, if it was built today, how much would the tax exemption would they get? How much would it cost for the city in terms of city services? How much tax revenue would we still get, because we still do get some tax income, and then added all those things together and subtracted some things, and then did a cost benefit analysis for that large imagined project. So we ended up for our text case, selecting an existing project because we had existing data on this apartment complex that made it really easy to get at some, relatively realistic numbers. So we used the River Trails apartments as our example, but we only used half of the site, just one of the parcels there. So it's the parcel on this map outlined in blue. So for this cost benefit analysis, we made some assumptions. We assumed that this imagined new apartment complex would be about the size of the River Trails apartments. It'd be 224 new units, 13 buildings on 17 acres. We assumed that the occupancy would be 2.5 persons per unit. So we imagined that this whole place would be completely occupied and every unit would have 2.5 people in it. We made some assumptions about how much the land value would increase over the course of that, of the life of the building, which we imagined to be about 50 years. As well, and we also made some assumptions about how other values would increase, such as the improvement value, how much the tax rate would increase over time, and other sales and utility tax rates, and as well as how much the cost of services, so the cost that the city has to spend on servicing these units, how much that would increase over time. And just a note about this, since we imagined that this project would be applying for the 20-year MFT program, that program requires that these units be sold, 25% of these units be sold as affordable to low-income households. So of our example project, that would mean that 56 of the 224 units would be required to be sold at affordable rates to low-income households. So taken all together, all the assumptions and all those calculations, this was the graph that we got. So imagining that this project was built today in 2023, and then it had a lifespan of 50 years, so existing until 2073. And with the costs and the benefits all taken into consideration, it looked to be that the city would be in the red about $10,000 a year, and then at the beginning, and then slowly getting up to breaking even at the 20-year mark, so at the end of the 20-year exemption. And then once the exemption ends, we would be then receiving all the taxes that had been exempted. And then we'd be, clearly in the positive at that point for that development. So another way to look at it was comparing the property tax income and the sales and utility tax income for the first year the project came online. And it seemed that comparing these graphs, that it was a pretty small fiscal impact for a pretty big project. Pardon me. So the graph on the left there is just showing the property taxes, both exempted and gotten that year for that one project. And then the gray bar is the entire city projected property tax income. And then the sales and utility tax graph on the right there is the same idea. The gray bar is the entire projected sales and utility tax income from the whole city. And then the other two bars is the projected lost and gained sales and utility tax for this project in particular. Okay, and then the next big change is to the proposed MFT areas themselves. And this is the item that I came to you last month with. So this is the map I showed you at the beginning. This map is showing where the existing MFT area is in yellow. And then the kind of really dark gray parcels there would represent what the near-term RTA would be with the new enacted ordinance. So that would be what the RTA would be today based on current zoning. And then the prospective expanded RTA is outlined in that dotted outline in light gray. So those would be areas that we would identify as areas that we would look to possibly expanding into based on future zoning with our comprehensive plan amendment cycle. So removing the existing area, this is what the public hearing would be addressing, making it a change to. So looking specifically at the downtown area, you saw this map earlier. This is our existing MFT RTA. And then this map is just demonstrating that our existing MFT RTA does not even take up all of our downtown regional growth center, which is one of the reasons why we were looking to expanding it into more of the downtown. So the proposal would be to take it from what it is today and then expanding it to these parcels as of today's zoning. So it would end up being this as of today. And then looking to potentially expanding it to this larger area in the dotted outline during our comprehensive plan update next year. And then looking at the River Road Corridor Plan area, same idea. There are no portions of the River Road Corridor Plan area that are currently eligible to apply for this tax exemption. So we would be looking at identifying these parcels today, based on today's current zoning, they would be immediately eligible to apply for the tax exemption. And then we would look to possibly expanding to other areas within the River Road Corridor Plan area during our comprehensive plan cycle update. And then looking to the South Hill area, this area also does not have any portions of it that are currently eligible to apply for this tax exemption. So we are proposing to identify these parcels immediately eligible to apply for this tax exemption. And then potentially looking to expand it to other portions of the South Hill Regional Growth Center, which is outlined on this map in the dotted outline with gray during our comp plan cycle. So the council action tonight is to hold a public hearing to make the map changes to the MFT residential target area, or RTA. And then hold a first reading of an ordinance to make policy changes and to adopt those map changes. The big ticket policy changes are to add a 20-year home ownership option to the program menu, to make some changes to our displacement policy, and to do some other minor administrative and streamlining of the program. So the next steps would be to return to you on December 5th for a second reading of the ordinance to adopt those policy changes I described and to make the map changes. Then we would plan to come back to you during the course of the comprehensive plan amendment cycle happening next year to look at revisiting those portions I showed you on the map that were outlined in the dotted outlines to possibly further expand the MFT area where appropriate. And then we'd also plan to return to you annually to report on the status of the MFT program and let you know how it's doing. I have.
Okay, good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that presentation. A lot of work on putting all that data together. Thank you for that. But I do have some questions before we open it up into a public hearing. Just for some thought, going back to the earlier slide where it talked about city council direction, and you mentioned these various south and east, to the Washington State Fair, SR 512, East Main, River Road Corridor. I saw all of those areas there, but there was one that you mentioned that I didn't see there. It was the connectivity of considering expanding the corridors between South Hill, the two regional growth centers. I didn't see a map showing that. Did I miss that? Or is that just something with consideration that's not in the proposal tonight?
That was something that City Council had mentioned possibly looking into. We did briefly discuss it with the Planning Commission, but it had been not put on the table a while back. So it's not on any of the maps.
I guess I would open up to council. Is that important to us to consider connecting the regional growth centers between the two and having the corridor up and down there included in the high density, consideration for living? It seems to me a corridor wouldn't be a bad idea. And would that be important that we want to maybe weave into the second reading or something for consideration? Just be thinking about that, because I was kind of looking for that. And I think that'd be, because I mean, we already have a connectivity. I mean, you look up and down Meridian, I mean, it's pretty high density, but there are some parcels that could use some more incentives, and maybe that might help with some living along a bus line for that to happen. So I'd like the council to consider maybe putting that in. So,
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
yeah.
My understanding is that all we are voting on is expanding this. All we are voting on is expanding this to the very first expansion, those darker places, not the ones with the perimeters. Those perimeters have nothing to do with this. They will have to do with the comprehensive plan. But nothing we are voting on has anything to do with those this evening. Correct? Correct. Okay.
They are included in the ordinance, but any future expansion would have to return to you for a public hearing.
Yeah, we don't want to do that. Nip it now.
No, the question is this. It's better if we see the diagram here.
Which diagram did you want to see?
Well, the one that we're actually voting on. I don't see it. We're not voting on that.
No, the was included. Kind of.
Keep going back.
I mean, it's not immediate.
No, we're not voting on that.
Right, you can only.
We're
apply
voting
to
on
that.
that. No, are we voting on that?
It can only apply to that as of today's zoning. That's
And
correct.
that right there.
Mhm.
This, correct.
As of today's zoning,
Okay,
yes.
this is what we're voting on today.
Which is the South only.
Right. No. It's downtown too, but this is the style of map. Those perimeters we deal with in the comprehensive plan, and we're not voting on that right now.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Show my colleagues, you've just shown what we're voting on right now. Show us what we're voting on in the downtown area. That
Mhm.
is what we're voting on, not the expanded version. And are we voting on anything on the River Road at all? That is what we're voting on the River Road. Okay, got it. I'm also voting on, in this, is the 20-year
Mhm.
and the more up-to-date displacement
Mhm.
language. That is it.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, got it. So if I want to put this on the table, so I can amend it, we'll just have one vote after that amendment. We just have one vote to make. Am I correct?
Following the public hearing, you will vote on the ordinance, which will include all of this. So
Understand.
you make the motion however you want to make it. If you want to amend the ordinance, you would just make the motion with the amendment baked into your motion.
Got it. I completely get it, but now we know what we'll be voting on. That's what I want.
Right.
Proceed,
And
Mr.
I
Mayor.
just one point of clarification, the reason you're only voting on the darker areas that you've just walked through is because we have to change the comp plan before we can add the other areas.
I get it.
I guess I wish I would have saw a map that showed all the dark areas in one slide. I see 3 chunks. It would have been nice to have one on one slide so we can see.
We saw that right at the beginning. You go back to the overshot. Over, back. This one.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
That's not it, because this shows with the comprehensive plan updates.
The dark areas in this, look at
Exactly,
the dark areas in this diagram are what you're voting on.
exactly.
Okay, good. All right, so the dark areas in this 3 region. So if hypothetically, this is good, we're having a discussion. At some point in the comprehensive plan, if that corridor is baked in, we would be re-looking at that time to connect the south and the downtown corridor.
You guys could certainly look into that.
Okay.
That corridor that we would explore would have to meet the requirements of the MFT program, which includes it being a center. There are some criteria that it has to meet to be identified as a center.
Okay, all right. Certainly we'll have to look at that. It would be nice to just kind of bridge that gap between the upper and lower if possible. If there was a way to do it, I think it would make sense to have a nice concentrated, in a sense, highway of high density incentives. I'll open it up for Councilmember Palmer to enlighten us a little bit. Thank you.
I had 2 questions. One is related to what Councilmember Castma raised. Do we have to include the prospective areas in this ordinance? Because I'm okay with the prospective areas downtown. I'm not okay with prospective areas in South Hill and River Road.
They're not required to be included.
I mean, is it written into the ordinance as prospective areas?
It is written in the ordinance of prospective
Okay.
areas, but we can change it.
We can change it, because I mean, we can make an amendment to exclude those prospective areas from River Road and South Hill if we wanted to. For this action. Because it's kind of confusing, and I don't know. We can talk about it after public comment, but I'm not going to be interested in applying it to the light shaded areas in River Road. I don't know why we would be incentivizing it in that particular area. Definitely along the River Road and the water area, that's kind of what we want. But I don't know why we'd do it elsewhere. So that's one. We gotta have a public hearing, talk about that later, but that's one question. The other question, I just wanted to understand the slide before this, I think, or 2 slides, or maybe, the cost one, the fiscal impacts one. Yeah, that one. Just so I understand. So on the left, you have $37,000. Is that the lost property tax or forgone property tax for this project?
Yes,
For 1 year?
for 1 year,
Right.
for the first year.
For the first year. And then on the right, in the middle there, the orange, $416,000. That is the sales tax and utility tax that are generated from the project. Is that correct?
Yes, the estimated sales and utility tax generated from the population now living at this Imagine project.
Okay. What's the utility tax? Utility tax to our utilities?
I believe so.
Or no, maybe that's like the phone and that tax,
Possibly.
right?
I'm
So it's
not
it's
sure, I'll
revenue.
be
It's not
honest.
it's not sewer or storm. I don't think it's that. No, this is, so
I might invite Barbara to come answer that question.
You're correct. It's the utility taxes on things like phone, power, those
Gotcha.
sorts of things.
Which goes into our revenue. That's the
Yes.
point. That's the point.
Yes.
So, okay, so that's very illuminating. I didn't want to skip it over because that's kind of the whole point. Yeah, we forgo some property tax, but we have a pretty significant increase in sales and utility tax. So it's a positive thing revenue wise. You don't think so?
It's not, definitely not.
You don't think so?
Residential is expensive. This only assumes a loss of property tax. It doesn't assume the expense that it takes to service.
Understood.
And what you do is for every dollar you bring in, you're spending about $1.15. So you're losing money. You're not only losing the property tax, but you're losing in the sense that you have to expend more to service police, fire, whatever the service may be that they utilize it costs more on residential. And that's not included in here.
No, that's not included in here, but I'm not sure what those numbers are.
Well, it's usually, like I say, that's usually the formula, about $1.15.
Okay, those are my two questions. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Castema.
Yes, I don't have an issue with expanding this immediately to the South Hill, to the River Road corridor. I may have a question of whether, how far we extend it along Stewart, for example, whether that's something, but that's a discussion for a different day. I do, however, think that 20 years is too long. I think that we stick with our 8-year and our 12-year. I have no problem with expanding the displacement procedures to update them, but that would be my recommendations. I think 20 years is just way too long. I think it is. I don't mean to sound dislogistic on this, but it sounds to me like it could end up being a bureaucratic nightmare too. I think that the 8 and 12 just look far more easier to administer, and keep those, but expand the footprint to which they can apply. That would be my advice.
Thank you. I would concur with the 8 and 12. I'm not sold on the 20, but I'm not opposed to it. But I would certainly welcome discussion from the council to get some direction on that. Anybody else want to discuss it before the public hearing? Okay. Councilmember Ferris.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a couple questions. So, based on, I would also support, but I would also support the downtown area in that outline once you get to that point. So, and on South Hill, the proposed includes property, it's Bradley Lake and Pierce College. I just don't know that makes any sense to expand it to those areas. And the River Road with the expanded where you've got the outline, which I know we're not actually talking about, but when you get to that point, I won't be here. So is problematic because that's our old part of town going up there. So there's I'm not sure. I could see it right on River Road, especially where all the commercial properties are. The one thing that I wanted to ask you, let's say based on your example, the 224, how much would it cost to the developer? To get this approved?
We didn't have those numbers. We didn't do
okay.
An analysis like that.
Because that's part of we're not selling 25-cent scones here. You know what I mean? So the thing is, to make it appealable, it's got to be low enough cost, because what we're talking about with the property taxes, from what I understand, is property taxes are 11% of our overall bill. And then we're going to take the land out of that and only give the tax deduction to the actual building. So it kind of, I look at it and I think, okay, well, is the hassle of paying for it and going through all the paperwork, the permitting and all that stuff, is that, like you said, obviously you did the exercise, the cost benefit analysis, and it came out that there was some benefit, but I'm just looking at it long term, because I know this hasn't been a real popular program. So, I guess I would have to ask you guys and maybe the city manager that what is the goal here? Do you have a goal that you get 1 or 2 people, or is this mostly just, we want this option as a menu of options? You know what I mean? We have this program, no one's used it. So we've got a thick packet, which is very informative. And I know you've spent a lot of time putting this together, but if we don't have any goals around it, because I know we need to have more affordable housing. It's not something that we have here. I would ask just what is the staff goal on that, and to me, that determines on how much, in other words, do you know what I mean? I'm not sure what do you know what I'm saying though? Having some sort of.
I think I understand the question. There's no like set number of units that we have a goal of getting from this particular program.
Yeah.
It was one of the tools identified from the Housing Action Plan, from a long list of potential tools that we could put in, our toolbox, if you will,
Right.
of things that could help the city increase our number of housing units and therefore help alleviate our housing crisis. So
Right.
while we haven't had a lot of people interested in using the program to date, we are seeing more interest in the program. We have
Okay.
heard from developers that they would like to use the program, but not where it is right now.
Right.
So we're hoping by expanding it that we will in the future have more interest in the program, and therefore get more housing units than we may have gotten without it.
Right.
So I can't give you a number, but I can tell you that we are hopeful that by expanding it, that we will actually get more housing and potentially even more affordable housing than we otherwise would without it.
Okay. And so Steve, I just would, we need to, if we're going to put this type of menu option together, it would be great if we had some sort of outreach, some sort of, I'm not sure how it would fit into like goals, because you can't really force people to do this, but if we went out to the MBA, maybe some of the organizations around here where, locally where we get the word out rather than, waiting for somebody to say, hey, do you have this? Because I wouldn't think, but I'm not a developer either. So there was one other question. Hold on. It's my 62-year mind is going to remember it. Oh, dang. I'm going to have to ring in. I can't remember. I'm sorry, but very good presentation and very thorough. It's very thorough, and I can see that you did a lot of work. So I'm really proud of you for that. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So Rachel, what I'm trying to figure out is that on the displacement policy, I'm going back to Meridian Mobile Estates when we had a whole bunch of people having to leave within a certain time and trying to come up with the dollars to help them relocate. So how does this work? So if we're going to have, say, we have the 12-year and I don't know whatever, it's 20%, is that correct, on the 12-year? Would be affordable?
Mm-hmm.
So you have your 224 unit, sample thing, but we have a bunch of people becoming ineligible for their living quarters at potentially the same time or within a rough period of time. Can you explain more about the displacement and the relocation? How do we avoid the lessons we've learned from the Meridian Mobile Estates? What happens there?
I don't know that this policy would completely avoid a situation exactly like that. I can tell you that the displacement policy we wrote up is intended to try and mitigate for something like that. For example, the requirement that the applicant provide the tenants with moving expenses is intended to help the tenants to relocate somewhere else with funds. It is also, we added that requirement that they be offered the first right of refusal for the newly constructed units. While that doesn't help them in the immediate future, when they're being displaced, if they go to somewhere temporarily, and then they would like to relocate back to where they originally lived, maybe that's where their children had gone to school, maybe it's an important place near their other family members, giving them the right to ask for the first opportunity to be given one of those units, I think is at least helpful in trying to mitigate some of that displacement. So at least they have a chance to get back to where they had lived.
So on the relocation funds, what is that? What is the amount?
As it's written, it says the applicant will provide the household, and this is only households that qualify as low-income households, with moving expenses according to the current Department of Transportation fixed residential moving cost schedule. I don't know what that current amount is, but that would be the amount that they would refer to.
Okay. Like I said, I have concerns. We did a great job. Staff did a great job. And as council did, trying to help those residents, but I really don't want to see us, whatever we can do to avoid getting to that same position where we had to try to come up with, piecemeal a bunch of funds together in order to allow them to have somewhere to live instead of ending up homeless. So that's my concern here. I do agree with Councilmember Castum. I don't like the 20 years. And I agree with Councilmember Palmer. I would prefer that we only pass the dark areas. We have a tendency to, if we did the other areas, it's going to be, the council said this. In the future, it's going to be inferred. If we pass it today with those outlined areas, it's going to be inferred that that's what we are intending, and we're not necessarily intending that. It's an option. So I would rather that the ordinance reflect what we actually intended to, what this council intends. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, is there a sense of urgency that we have to pass this? If council decides they want to table this until next week to get more information, we could certainly do that. I mean, is there a time issue that we don't have to pass this first reading if we want more information so we can be thoughtful in our study process of studying this?
Looking at staff, unless I'm seeing something that says there's some time sensitive nature to this, I don't believe there is, Mayor.
I'd like to propose that we delay this until at least our next meeting to get some more information, and maybe as what Councilmember Ferris was saying, to make sure, is this a product that industry wants to buy? And why put together a product if they don't want to buy it? Go with the consumers, find out what they're interested in. And is this truly an incentive that would stimulate economic growth and vibrancy and housing in our region? It'd be nice to verify that, get more information. So unless there's a sense of urgency, council, and I don't sense from any of us here a sense of urgency to pass it tonight, I might suggest that we bring it back at our next council meeting, which is again is in a week. Is that right? Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Really quick, because a couple of us aren't going to be here. We've only got 2 more meetings. So
yeah.
I would, if we're not going to pass it this year, I would prefer to know that, because I'd rather not comment on it if I'm not here to pass it. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So, I mean, that's the only time sensitive.
Well, I think we have 2 meetings left. So let's say hypothetically, council decided to defer this till the next meeting. We would have that first reading hypothetically, and hypothetically the second reading could be at the last one. So
I mean, just wanted to bring that issue up.
Okay. I was just gonna, sorry.
Right.
Yeah. This is just first reading, so it can be amended at second reading. So if you want to do first reading tonight, you can, and just amend it at second reading, or you can delay first reading and then do second reading at December 5th. Just pointing that out.
Okay. All right. Councilmember Dorr, did you still have some comments? Your hand was still raised.
Yeah, no, I put it back up. A couple things. If we're set for public hearing, so I don't know if it's going to be delayed. Is the public hearing delayed? And 2, if we're going to ask staff, if we do want to bring this back, we should probably give them direction on what information we're asking them to come back with. What is it that's going to help us get to that point of making a decision? Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Palmer, did you want to chime in?
Well, I think we should just have the public hearing. We can postpone it till first reading till next if you want. I mean, I think I'm okay moving forward, but if you want a little more time, that's fine.
Okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, there, a couple of comments. First off, that, do we have a product here that developers want to do? And I think the way we find that out is by doing it. You know, if we don't do anything and nothing happens, then we don't know anything. But if we do it and developers start taking advantage of it, then I think some good things are going to happen. Will we need to tweak it in the future? I think so. My question is, we've got a lot of decisions in here, and it's difficult to chew on all of them at the same time. So I wanted to ask whether or not some of this stuff would be severable. We've got one decision about what areas we're going to cover, another decision about 8, 12, 20-year coverage. Will we do something, have an affordable come on to the 8 years? We've got displacement policies here. You know, with 7 of us on the dais, we all may have our own choice in terms of all of the, none of us may agree with each other with all of the different combinations we could come up with. So you know, can we look at displacement policy separate from the length of terms versus areas involved? I just, you know, again, I'm having trouble digesting the whole package in one bite.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, that's a procedural move, is to divide the question. And Joe Beck can help us out on this, but I believe could I conceivably divide the question on an ordinance?
Probably the most effective way would be for somebody to make a motion. And
Mhm.
then if there's anybody that wanted it to be different on some point, make an amending motion, and you can have several vote on several amending motions. And try each one of these issues individually that way. You can separate the question, but ultimately you have to vote on the ordinance as a package. So it's hard to separate the vote on the ordinance without going through some amending motions.
Mr. Mayor, my
Yes.
suggestion is we can do all that next meeting.
That's what I was thinking.
Let's have the public hearing, see if anybody has anything to say, and then just defer this to next week.
Yeah, I think so too. All right, Councilmember King.
Thank you. Great job, by the way. And my comment is to move forward with the public hearing as is, and any amended motions be brought up on second reading. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Rachel. Okay, at this time I'll open it up for public comment. If any of you have gathered here tonight to talk about this specific ordinance that's before us, before we take any action on it, I open the public meeting up for discussion. If you'd like to speak and come to the podium, you'll have 2 minutes to speak to this and open that up.
Thank you, Mayor Johnson. My name is Paul Romich. I live in District 1. Pretty excited to get to speak a second time tonight. I'm in favor of, expanding the program as much as possible. As discussed tonight, it hasn't been taken advantage of as much as, we kind of initially foresaw. So, expanding the footprint, reducing the barriers to entry, right? And that will help lower the cost of living and the, cost of housing. And the quicker we can do that, the better, right? Teachers are considered low income or below median income. That's kind of wild, right? They're considered, they're the core part of our city, and the cost of living is creeping further and further beyond them, and there's so many people like that, and so just the more we can expand it and the more we can help bring that cost of living down, the better. So that's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Anybody else like to speak to this issue? Please come forward. Anybody listening on Zoom that would like to speak to that, please indicate by by raising a hand icon. I'm happy to refer to you. Okay, public hearing is closed. Now, council will move it back to you. Seems like we have a couple options. One is to entertain a motion to accept it as is with possible revisions or rejection at second reading, or defer this to to chew on it some more, come back with first reading next week and then second reading possibly in our last meeting in December. Council, what is your thoughts?
I'm not sure if it's the right way. I just defer to postpone this till next meeting. and move
Just
on.
everything, just postpone everything.
Everything.
That was my initial thought, unless somebody had are you making a motion?
Yes, that's my motion.
Okay, he's making a motion to postpone this first reading and everything until next council meeting.
Next week. Yeah.
Okay.
I would like to make an amendment to that
We
motion.
we need a second first, because it's not even.
Okay.
I want to hear what Councilmember King says first before I second anything.
I would like to move forward with my motion of
Okay.
approving.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have
Yes,
a
we
motion and a
just-
second. Now we're going to open it up for discussion. Okay, Councilmember King.
No. John's motion is the one on the table. now.
Yeah,
Right,
John's motion, she's second.
right,
I would like to make an amendment
yeah.
to move forward with this first reading as stated.
That's not really an amendment, that.
It's going back, so he's making an amendment. I get what you're saying.
We
Yes,
should, we should just reject his,
correct.
and then you should make your motion.
You're correct.
Okay,
So we got to vote.
okay. All right, so you're voicing, well, there's two ways you can go about it. You can amend to reject it, or just
I guess you could.
you could amend to reject it.
You
I
want to
guess.
amend to reject? Let's just vote.
Let's
Let's
vote
vote.
on Jones.
Yes.
Well, okay, well, we know how you're gonna vote, Councilor King.
I'm gonna.
Okay. So Councilor Palmer has a motion on the table to delay this first reading and discussion until next meeting with a possible reading and acceptance of first reading next meeting, and then a possible second or last meeting in December. If I understand that, that's the motion on the table. We have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Wow.
Okay, new motion.
So that failed. Motion. Are we good over here?
Go for it.
Okay. Motion to move forward on the current as is.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to move forward with the first reading of item number 4B. No, excuse me, 4C, excuse me. No, wait. It's been going too long. 4C, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, 4C.
Yeah, 4C.
As stated, all those in favor signify by saying
Can I
aye.
hold it? Discussion. I have a question.
Okay,
Our attorney Joe Beck. Is it best, this is kind of advice, but I'm gonna couch it, well, I'm gonna ask it. Is now the time to divide, or should I save that for second reading? I know I can do both, but
You can do either way. If you're ready to go and extend discussion and draw this thing out, go ahead and do it now. But if you want to set this aside for tonight and get into that with fresh minds, then you would wait until next.
good
time around.
advice, thank you. I know it's legal and also kind of professional, but with that, I have no amendments.
okay. So we have a motion and a second to approve first reading of 4C as stated. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, all those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you.
That was easy.
I would encourage council though, even though we passed that quote unanimously, didn't seem like we were all necessarily on the same page. I think we should discuss this amongst ourselves in a legal manner, in a small group matter, and check with staff, check with industry, whatever, and come back with some very decisive revisions on point 2. We're going to do that. So on
Absolutely.
second reading. Okay. All right, council, before us, we have an ordinance 5A, a second reading of an ordinance amending the Puyallup Municipal Code pertaining to utility rates, building procedures, and certain water regulations. We've already had a presentation on this, so unless there's any questions, I might move approval for a second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve item 5A, second reading. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes. City Clerk, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Palmer,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Aye.
Councilmember Castema,
Aye.
Councilmember King,
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Council. Council, before us, we have 5B, a second reading and orders amending code provisions related to the appeal of the City of Puyallup State Environmental Policy Act, SEPA decisions.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Unless there's any discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, second reading of 5B indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Roll call, please.
Deputy Mayor Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Councilmember Ferris.
Aye.
Councilmember Castema,
Aye.
Councilmember King,
Aye.
Councilmember Palmer.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Thank you, Council. Motion passes. Another second reading, 5C. First reading of an ordinance pertaining to routine 2023 budget adjustments.
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Just a point of clarity. Says that there can be an introduction. Is that a typo or what's going on with that? I'm just trying to follow the notes here. If we're missed, I don't want to cut her off. Get some information for us.
Mayor, if the council would like one, this is the routine quarterly budget adjustments. The finance director can certainly do an introduction if you'd like one. I think that's the notes you're reading from the mayor's agenda.
Correct. Yeah.
It's only if you'd like one.
Okay. Council, do you want any introduction on this?
I don't need one.
No.
Okay. All right. We got a motion and a second. First reading of 5C. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Okay. First reading passes. Thank you, Barbara, for getting your steps in there. Appreciate that. Okay. 5D. Council, we have a first reading of an ordinance pertaining to the rezoning of 4 parcels along the west side of South Meridian between 17th and 19th Avenue Southwest from professional office to limited mixed use. I understand that our senior planner, Chris Beal, will give a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is a short presentation on a rezone ordinance for the proposal that was mentioned in the first part of the reading. This is related to 4 parcels equaling roughly 4 acres, just below 4 acres on the west side of South Meridian, just up the hill from the major intersection at 15th. They're zoned professional office, which is a really narrow zone. It really only permits professional offices, medical offices, and a few accessory uses like daycare facilities and restaurants. And the owner applied for a simple rezone, so it does not include a comprehensive plan amendment. Simple rezones, which implement the comprehensive plan, go through the hearing examiner process. Should have pulled that up. This is not associated with a specific development proposal. Again, rezones when my screen went black.
Doesn't like you, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe.
It went dark and it said something about flashing. So it said it went dark. Did you see that?
No.
Here it comes.
There we go.
Oh.
I can do this without the presentation, but and it looks like some folks have it in paper copy. Essentially, the rezone was part of a public hearing that the hearing examiner held on October 10th. The hearing examiner issued an approval decision. That approval decision was not appealed. So the council's action tonight is to pass first reading of an ordinance that would essentially ratify the hearing examiner's previous decision on public hearing, which is included in your packet. So available for any questions, and that's it.
Move approval.
Okay,
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll open up for discussion. Deputy Mayor?
I was trying to get my motion in there first.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Ferris aced me out, but I'm familiar with those parcels in there. I think we need more residential, mixed use kinds of things there. The narrow definition there limits the use of that property, so I think this is a good rezone to do, and we'll help develop those properties. Thanks.
Councilmember Castleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just for clarification, and I apologize. The zoning that is there currently allows for what? And this will allow for,
Professional offices primarily, so medical,
that's
any kind
currently,
of professional
that's
office.
currently.
Correct. Allows for a few accessory uses like daycare centers and restaurants. No residential.
Okay.
Limited mixed use allows for residential, allows for commercial retail and professional office, does not allow for auto uses like repair shops or car dealerships or anything like that.
Will it still allow for medical facilities?
Yes.
It will. Okay, fine. I only say that because that corridor is very healthy in the sense that you have a lot of medical complexes, and I don't want to somehow exclude the possibility of more of those types of businesses. Thank you.
So this opens up a larger menu for investors or developers to choose what might be the most profitable time to provide services. Okay.
Yeah, there were a lot of findings in the hearing examiner's report about our policies and our housing action plan around that. So, yeah.
Councilmember Palmer?
Real quick. So this is a rezone. It went to the hearing examiner because we made changes to have these rezones go to hearing examiner. Why does it even come back to us?
Because the council adopts the city's official zoning map. So your action is limited only to adopting the hearing examiner's decision. So it implements the zoning map change. The decision's already basically been approved.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty narrow.
That's so this is kind of a
Formality.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, council, we have a motion and a second. For
Mr. Mayor, I'll make that motion.
I think we already have a motion.
Okay.
I think we have a motion and a second. I think Councilmember Ferris did a motion. Is that correct? And somebody else did a second, if I recall. Okay, all right, good. So all those in favor of passing the first reading on item first on 5D signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Council, we have a 5E, a first reading of an ordinance addressing temporary and nuisance parking restrictions. Our city attorney, Joe Beck, is going to introduce the ordinance and give us some great information to consider.
Yes, and I hope to be very quick. This is an ordinance that was requested from the police department and Public Works. In the city of Puyallup, we do not have any kind of comprehensive temporary parking provisions, parking restriction provisions. If we want no parking, we essentially have to come to council to have it approved by code. And we have many situations where there are temporary events, there are projects or construction. There's a number of things I've listed out. Emergency events, construction activity, nuisance, and criminal behavior is another issue where you have people parking in an unsanitary fashion. We have instances where raw sewage is being dumped on the street, and we don't have the ability to post that no parking for a temporary period of time so we can deal with the impact to the environment and the garbage and whatever that's going on and get it cleaned up. So there are a number of reasons that we need and this ability. And what this would allow is for the city manager to designate temporary no parking areas for this variety of reasons that we really need this ability for. And so that's what's before you tonight. There's two different sections and two different chapters of our code addressing these issues. I think the language is pretty clear and speaks for itself, but I'm happy to answer any questions if council has any questions about these new sections that are being proposed for our Puyallup Municipal Code.
Well, thank you. I just got to make a comment before there's any entertainment motion. Out of all the things we've read tonight and studied, this one kind of moves me in a wonderful way because it seems like a common sense thing. We're taking the politics out of it. We're empowering our city manager to take action on a trouble with our police chief to be nimble and take care of issues quickly without a political bureaucracy. So I'm full support of this. I love it. Councilor, Councilor Ferris. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Joe, is this, we have a few streets that are so impacted by the car dealers that they can't even put their garbage cans out without, putting them in their driveway. Would this cover that sort of complaint?
It certainly would be a temporary fix for any situation. One instance we've had is where semi trucks are idling and parking in areas that are not otherwise no parking areas. And this would give us the actual authority to designate an area as an emphasis area and try to clean that type of activity up. If we know there's an area where we don't want people parking long-term at all, then we would want to come back and probably adopt that as a more permanent fix in the code. But this certainly gives us a tool to deal with emerging issues.
And how would citizens, after we pass this, how would citizens come to the city and ask for that?
They would probably just contact the city through whatever our general information. I off the top of my head, I don't know what that email is, but if you go to our website, there's ways to contact the city. So that would be one way, a complaint to the police department, that sort of thing, depending on what it's about and what the issue is. And then we would be able to address those things like we address all the complaints that we receive.
Right. And so just so folks know is that, the police have been out to that street over and over again, and they just they can't do anything. So I strongly recommend that council adopt this ordinance, and I move approval.
Second.
All right, Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Joe, I just have a question as far as it says temporary, but what is temporary? There's no definition of how long temporary is. So at what?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. I'm wondering, so at what point, when you say it comes back to council eventually, but what is considered temporary?
It's not defined. And certainly if that was a concern, we could add something to that effect. But temporary just means not permanent. But it's open-ended for the concept being that it would be for the period of need. So if the issue goes away, then the temporary parking restriction should also go away at that point. But it's not specified to a specific time frame because we are dealing with a number of different types of temporary issues. And so I didn't pick a time frame. Certainly something we could do if that's a concern.
I'm not hugely concerned. It just, like when you said it would come back to council, it just seems like that's undefined as far as, is 6 months temporary? Is 6 years temporary? When does?
Yeah. 6 months might be temporary, if we had a project going on, a street project or something of that sort. 6 years seems on the extreme side to me. And the idea is, again, just to be able to have this authority for the time period necessary to address the issue. What I was talking about coming back to council was if we had a situation that we just decided forever and all time, this needs to be designated as a no parking area, that would be when for sure council would have to adopt it at that point.
Okay, and so if there's an area in which the city manager or whoever, they decide, okay, we're gonna do this temporary, and citizens disagree with that, or the length of time it's ongoing, same recommendation, they would contact whom?
Again, I would, my suggestion would be through our general information. We have people at the counter at the city clerk's office. We have the police department for matters involving parking in general and criminal or infraction type matters. So I think there's a number of different ways to access and make concerns known to the city. But for sure, going to our website and using our general contact information would get the ball rolling. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, council. Seems, if I recall right, we have a motion and a second. Is that correct, City Clerk? We have a second. Thank you. So all in favor of adopting first reading of item 5E, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Thank you, council. Okay, we're done with the ordinances, first and second readings, all that. Now we're moving into consideration requests. We have a Van Leeuwen Park Master Plan update. I understand our Parks and Rec Director Cody is going to introduce Andrew and give us a presentation on this.
Yeah, so we're here to update you on the Van Leeuwen Master Plan project and get your feedback. And with us tonight is BCRA and Andrew Cirillo and Eric Streeby.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council. So tonight for our presentation on the Van Leeuwen Master Plan revision process, the kind of hope for tonight is to update you all on how the process has been going thus far, the different feedback we've received from the public in a variety of different venues, as well as the Parks and Recreation Board last night, and to receive feedback from the council and hopefully establish a preferred alternative. We've prepared 3 alternatives that we'll talk through, and the hope would be to establish which one of those is preferred to move forward, or some combination of them. And that kind of leads into some next steps. So I'll start by talking about the initial online survey that Cody presented to you all a few city council meetings ago. I'll say fairly high level because Cody did a great job of walking you guys through that. But back in August, we put together an online survey for kind of helping to flesh out what the needs and desires were for this master plan revision. This survey was open for 3 weeks to the public, and over that time, we received over 1,000 total responses. 84% of those were from residents of the city, with the rest being surrounding areas, people still very much interested in the park and how it develops. Within that survey, there was a general desire to remove the multi-purpose field that was previously included with the original master plan. And when presented with options of what to do with the space that field took up, there was a desire to replace it with more passive use. Passive recreation uses. 3 themes that came up during that initial survey was a desire for open space, a desire for a pump track, and some desire for pickleball as well. To touch briefly on the concept of a pump track, because it is somewhat of a newer thing within the recreation world, a pump track is something that could be constructed of multiple materials. You see on the screen here, different options with precast concrete, fiberglass, kind of modular units, or even asphalt, like you see there in the middle. And what the intent of a pump track is to create a circuit, maybe, or even as you see in the top image there, some straight line segments where users are able to kind of ride up and down these undulations, pumping similar to how you would ride or go on a swing, to kind of build up some momentum and be able to make it all the way around the circuit without pedaling. One of the great things about the pump track is that it is an amenity that is open to a number of different user groups. You can ride it on a bike, you can ride it on a skateboard, rollerblades, or as you see here in the picture, before you even wheelchair users can ride on it, which is really great. So there's a low bar for entry. It's open to all ages and user groups. And it's modular in nature, so it could be something that could be designed to fit this site very specifically. So when Cody brought the initial online survey results to council a month or so back, there were several things that we heard from you all. Particularly, there was substantial preference for more passive recreation opportunities. And I think there was a general agreement with what the survey showed from the public, that there was a desire for those passive recreation opportunities, understanding that that's currently how the site's being used. And so wanting to continue to provide those opportunities. There was some preference. I think Councilmember Ferris was the one who voiced the preference for pickleball. Yeah. And so that was something that we wanted to make sure that was captured in the alternatives that were developed. But overall, the themes that were stated during that council meeting that we wanted to see, or that you all wanted to see through the development of the park, was a place of tranquility, serenity, calm. There was a desire to keep the loop in there that what this park is functioning at now, kind of providing that space for people to engage with nature, with the walking trail and things, that was something that you guys wanted to keep. So with that information, our team developed 3 different alternatives that I'll talk through tonight. And these 3 alternatives range from alternative 1 being the most active recreation opportunities to option 3 being the most passive recreation opportunities, with alternate 2 being kind of a blend of those. So alternate 1, you can see, I will state at the outset that none of the 3 alternatives are showing the synthetic turf field, the multi-use field, per the survey results and the direction that we got from council. But alternate 1 does include some sports courts, specifically pickleball, tennis, and basketball courts that are located off of 8th Avenue Southeast down there in the southern end of the site. It also includes a skate park and a pump track. And because of the more active recreation kind of density in that southern area, this is the alternate that includes the most amount of parking, with 160 stalls total. Alternate 2, which is kind of our mix of active and passive recreation, does include pickleball courts. In this concept, they were relocated up off of 33rd Street to kind of create a little hub up there by that parking lot. In the southern area of the site, we still have the pump track. And with this being kind of our moderate active / passive recreation, we have 114 parking stalls shown. And lastly, alternate 3, like I mentioned, the most passive recreation alternative includes no pickleball, tennis, or basketball courts, but rather focuses on providing the pump track and the skate park down at the southern end of the site by the playground, and with kind of a lower level of active recreation opportunities. It does include the least amount of parking with 98 total parking stalls. These three alternatives were taken to a public meeting that was held just this last month. One of the things I will mention is that in that public meeting, we did have some good engagement from the folks that showed up, but the demographic of the people that showed up to participate in the public meeting were fairly dissimilar from those that engaged in the original public survey. I think a handful of the folks that showed up lived near the park, but were outside of city limits, and had some just kind of general thoughts on the area in general. And so the themes that we heard from that public meeting was a support for more parking, and kind of a recognition that that area needs more parking. There was support for the passive recreation opportunities. There was a lot of favorable thoughts expressed about the lawns and the trails. Generally, there was opposition to the basketball and tennis courts, with some mixed feedback on the pump track and skate park. And then because we had more people that lived in that area, there was also a desire for roadway improvements in the area, which would be outside of the scope of this project, but something that was good to note nonetheless. At that meeting, we did have like a paper form that people could fill out expressing which of the three alternatives they most preferred. Respondents who filled out that form, essentially we had no votes for, or no indications of preference for alternate 1, but alternates 2 and 3 came out in a dead heat 50-50 split. As I mentioned, we met with the Parks and Recreation Board last night and presented these three alternatives to them. During that meeting, the 6 members of that board split 2 votes for each of the 3 options.
Oh, wow.
So it was a nice even spread there. There was a desire for those that liked the active recreation elements like the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, basketball courts, pump track, that type of thing, to keep that down in the southern area of the site, where the northern area of the site was desired to keep that more passive recreation. And with that, I will turn it back to you guys for questions and feedback.
I have a question on alternate 2. You say it's pickleball courts and a pump track with no skateboard, but it looks like, is that skateboard track in there, that little gray, what is that? Or is that the pump track? That's a pump track.
Yeah, that gray area is the pump track.
Okay, then on the alternate 3, what's that little horseshoe above the pump track then?
Yeah, the horseshoe above the skate park, or above the pump track on alternate 3 is the skate park.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yep. Okay.
On alternate 2, there is we added some graphics for the loop in there that may read a little bit gray.
Sure. So I have a question. I'm intrigued by the pump track concept. It seems like something new. We don't have anything like that in our city. So it would be some kind of an alternative new enjoyment.
Correct.
So I'm intrigued by that, but I don't have any history of where one's at. And other than I heard Leavenworth has one, I think I heard someone mention that. But they're kind of a tourist city. So I'm wondering, in terms of an established city where you basically have mostly residents that be using it, say majority of the time, are there any municipalities that are using a pump track? And if so, what has it initially in paper, what the thought was, it's going to be this wonderful place where kids and people in wheelchairs can come and do this. But did it get hijacked by a skateboard park and turn into a skateboard park where they've actually taken that and used it as a skateboard issue like you would see in a traditional skateboard park? That's the concern that I have, is that the intent was some passive use where there's no pedaling, just kind of moving. And would it really convert by default to skaters who would, even though it's not a skateboard park, would convert it to a skateboard concept? Just kind of curious on what the end result might be from the imagined intended or thought.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I know this is a fairly new thing regionally, so there aren't a ton to take a look at, and I think oftentimes these have kind of stemmed from a more informal development of dirt pump tracks, which I know that they've got one out in Ording and stuff like that. But in terms of developed ones, and this is on the public record of my ignorance and how to say it, but the town of Tenino. Yes, I know they have one. And talking to the manufacturer of the pump track, they said that the city officials there love the track. It's been a great improvement for their city, and they even said, "Hey, if anyone from Puyallup wants to reach out to them, they'd be happy to talk about it." So I know it's been a benefit there, but that's the one kind of example that stands out in my mind around here.
Yeah. So I know a skateboard park is designed, to use momentum to kind of build, this kind of, in a sense, it's like a big pump because it's kind of up and down the side walls and doing things. So it's just a different version, more of a track mode. And I'm just really concerned that it might be a default, another skateboard park that's just in a form of a track, and then really, in a sense, perhaps crowding out those that want to come on bikes and wheelchairs and that kind of thing. So that would be the only concern I have on that. So I'll open it up to council, and Councilmember King is first on the docket.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting this together. I'm in favor of alternate one, but I would be interested in, since tonight's theme is amending. Basically, I love everything about alternate one, but I would remove the skate park. And I say that because we have the pump track, the pickleball courts, the tennis courts, and the basketball courts. And I'm not seeing any basketball court or tennis courts on the other, maybe tennis courts up on is that tennis courts or pickleball on the top left of alternate two?
Alternate two is pickleball courts.
Okay. So no tennis courts
That's
other
correct.
than on alternate one. So that's where I'm kind of leaning. We already have a skateboard park in our city, and I think that can stay there. But I would be very encouraged to see an alternate 1B, if you will, of basically all of this minus the skateboard park, and having some more green area right there. I think that would be very beneficial, but that would be my only recommendation to this. I love everything about alternate one, but with the removal of the skate park, just because we already have one. And I would like to add more green space. That Van Lierop Park, if we can, I'm open to other suggestions my colleagues say about adding more green space out there and removing some other items as well, maybe. But at least remove the skateboard park would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Just a thought, and before I turn it over, I'm just thinking. So when you look at alternate one, and I'm just doing rough math, if you count the middle diagonal as green space and the total upper right-hand corner is green space, you got 50% still open space with some other 50% of other activities. So it's not like you're filling everything up with active activities. There are still some significant property areas for open space and open view, right? So it's not like the whole thing's converted. So, all right, good. Councilmember Palmer, enlighten us. This is, you got 3 council members left, council meetings left to put your influence on here.
Yeah.
Help us.
So here's what I think. Well, I think alternate 1 is too intensive for what the public wanted from what we heard. From the 1,000 people that responded. I think people were looking for those words that you said, peace, tranquility. I think that's inconsistent with alternative 1. And I think you heard that at the public outreach. So I wouldn't be in favor of alternative 1. I think it's too intensive down in that lower right. So I'd be looking more at option 1, 2, or 3. I would be recommending. I do agree that we don't need both at skate and pump. So I would say eliminate the skate park and have, if we go with the pump track, I don't think we need both. And on the pump track, I do think we want to have the asphalt version that was displayed there, like Leavenworth and Tenino apparently, and the NIMO up in Bend, BC has one too. I do think that they would be used. You can use it by lots of different means. I don't think it would be overrun by skateboards. I don't think. That's my guess. That we could ask Tenino and see what they say. So, my preference is alternative 3, just because of it meets kind of that peacefulness objective, but has some amenities. I actually would go with, so I would actually recommend alternative 3 without the skateboard park, and with the middle all looping, the middle grass up above. I don't know if we have grass on the right, that big area there. I don't know why we need a second patch of grass. I would say we just keep all that looping to keep more of that natural feel there. So that's what my thoughts in terms of hearing what the public said. And so we have some things, but it's pretty passive. Not have kind of the active sports.
Okay, that's surprising. Yeah, I mean, it's virtually all passive. I mean, if you eliminate the skate, all you really have, there's nothing active except for the pump. That's it, pump track. Okay, all right. Okay, good. Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This
Sure.
will be riveting.
All right, I love it. Let's do it. Ribbit.
Okay, so I disagree with making I like these 2 grass patches. So I disagree with Councilmember Palmer on that. And this could be a nice area if we wanted to do concerts in the park at some point. So I agree with Councilmember King on most of what he said. I like alternative 1 because it has expanded parking. And I think that there is if you're looking at alternate 1, the top half, I mean, if you're looking at the panhandle right there, everything above the panhandle is either parking or passive space. So having kind of an active space down here on the panhandle is nice. It's separated from there's a good distance between this area and in the passive areas. And it fills a need that we have had a lot of people come to council and say they want, like the pickleball courts. Now, I would agree with the skate park because we do have one. And I would ask our new Parks and Rec director if the need for additional tennis courts is warranted. Is it warranted? I mean, I know you have the ones over there by the rec center. And you said that people use those a lot.
Yeah, I think that we probably meet the demand for tennis currently, but with pickleball, also sharing the courts over at Clark's Creek, it does create some issues.
So if we were to put a pickleball court here, then that would kind of ease the need for
Potentially, yeah.
potentially, okay. So I'm just saying, hey, I like the little farm space that you have there. And unless, I mean, I would revert back to the Parks and Rec on what we actually need, but I love having the pickleball courts. And we have had presentations from citizens on the pump track. Now, the only thing, I mean, dirt hurts as bad sometimes as pavement, but I would look at, you know, for liability purposes, having something like that, especially if I'm not sure. In my mind, I'm thinking of, you know, dirt racing, which is nothing compared to this, but is there, are they bicycling at high speeds? Or, I mean, because, and the reason why I'm asking is because hitting the pavement or cement or asphalt is gonna hurt like a dickens. But if we have kind of this molded fiberglass, it won't hurt unless you fall off it into the, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I'm just looking at from a safety perspective. I like the idea of having a pump track, but just what's the safest is having, I mean, our ground here is really like silty soft. So having, how do we adjust that so that they do have the hills and valleys with the dirt? You know what I mean? It's not, it's just river silt soil, you know, so anyway, that would be my thought is just if we were to choose a pump track, well, I would just like to know what the safest alternative is. And unless you're coming back in the next 2 meetings after this, I probably won't see you, but that would just be my concern. But I do like one with some adjustments. So no, unless we need it per the rec director, is no basketball, no tennis. And then the rest the same. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so great.
So what did you just say? You said no basketball, no tennis?
But
The
you wanted
alternate one?
Alternate one, just, yeah.
And no skate park?
No skate park, right, yeah,
Which
thank you.
brings you pretty close to alternative 3.
But it has more parking.
Oh, okay.
So I guess that's, so alternative 3 only has 98 stalls, this has 160 stalls.
It looks
So,
like the main difference is the upper left then,
uh,
just bigger in the upper left.
yes, but I chose it just for that reason and taking out some of the active stuff, but still having a little bit.
But you're keeping the pickleball, is that correct?
Well,
I thought I heard.
Pickleball, is St. Ed.
Yeah.
Pickleball Ed is in our district.
Okay, so you want alternate 1, but you want to keep pickleball, but you want to remove tennis and basketball courts and skateboard park.
Yeah.
So this is the amendments tonight. You got amendments going on here. Okay.
Okay, it's just my input.
I love it. Yeah, thank you. It's great. Councilor Castema, give us your opinion.
Well, I think that actually, as a person who had 5 kids, I have 5 children, and knowing who lives up Shaw Road and all of the neighborhoods that are up there, and just how family focused that entire area is, I want something that when I bring my children there after a busy day of work, that I have all the alternatives I could possibly have, so that I could go there and I have a basketball court. I've got a pump track. I have got pickleball courts. I've got rock climbing walls. I want options with all of my kids. I want to be able to throw the Frisbee there, but yet bring my granddaughter out there and go around. In other words, the more activities that are there for me, for my family, I am far more satisfied. And you've got parking, because these people are going to have to drive down Shaw Road, and you know, which will take a while. So I'm on alternative 1. There's just, And I do understand that some people want serenity, but we've got the 5 Mile Loop. We've got DeCourcy Park, which is very serene. We have Wildwood Park. You know, there are lots of places you can go if you want to get away in Puyallup. And if you want to do that, you tend to be probably more, you're not piling a car full of kids. If you want to go on those contemplative type of walks, and I think you could probably drive to one of those other places. But I think with all the families that are all there, I think you want a facility that is intense, offers all kinds of options, is family focused, and that's why I like.
So if I could just clarify, so you like alternative one, you're the third one, but what you would pull off of there would be you would pull off the skate park.
No, I wouldn't pull off anything.
You leave the skate park for you.
You know,
I'm just asking.
One half a dozen of another.
All
All
right.
I know is that I think that as a family, I want as many activities as I
All right.
can get.
Okay, good. Just want to clarify.
That's because I have like I say, I have 5 kids, so they're all over the map as far as activities go.
Good.
And that's why.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to zip on over to Councilmember Dorr, please.
Thank you. So I am leaning towards alternate 3 without a skate park, but I do like either alternate 1 or 2 for the parking aspect of it. So I think we do need more than 98 stalls. So my first inclination is option 3, no skate park, go with the 114 stalls up above. And like I said, the feedback I get and the survey, buttressed to that was more the serene, go out nature type of park. People love Bradley Lake Park, and there's that aspect of it. But then I don't get complaints like when we added the baseball fields and did some stuff that it's too much activity. So anyway, I'm 3, no skate park, and add some of the parking from 1 or 2. Thanks.
So thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I'll keep it short. I like alternative 2 with just the pump track and the pickleball courts. In terms of configuration and where you put them, I don't care too much. I like Councilmember Palmer's idea of leaving more of the loop and in a field. So taking out that one of those grassy fields there makes sense to me. That's it.
And I'll chime in. I'm going to lean towards alternate 2 as well. So at this point, initially, my mind could be convinced otherwise, but that gets us the pickleball courts, gets us the pump track, and that gets quite a bit of area. Although I do still think that that's why alternate 1, I still think has plenty of serenity. Help me, consultants. Everything is concentrated down that lower panhandle. For the most part, everything above that is open space. So I don't know how unserene that is. Other than the parking is up there. So that's why I'm not convinced that 1, I might lean towards 1. Right now I'm leaning to 2, but I could be convinced on 1 because everything is concentrated down the lower panhandle. That whole 2/3 of it's open space. So I could be open to 1. If I did go with 1, I'm leaning towards 2. If I did go with 1, I would do 1, but I would exit the skate park, leave everything else out on there, and that would still give that tranquil, but everything concentrated down below for those that wanted that. But I agree. I think also passive too, and I agree with Councilmember Dorr in regards to when you get into team sports, that's when it gets really congested. You get a bunch of players and teams, and it really is different. But you have a lot of individuals kind of enjoying a little one-on-one or pickleball. It's not like some massive, sports where everyone's bringing teams down. That's when it gets really congested. So So that's my thoughts on that. We can come back, I'm sure, and discuss that more. We have Councilor Palmer that's gonna give us some more feedback.
Well, I wonder if we could compromise somewhere around alternative two, because we had some that wanted more, some that wanted less. I'm not gonna live with alternative two. If people really wanted to have pickleball courts, I prefer not, but the thing about alternative two, I actually think that alternative one parking is excessive. I mean, you're paving over so much of this park. We only have so much park. And so 160 stalls, I think, is a little excessive. I think 114 under alternative two is a little more reasonable. I do want to know, just so everybody knows, that we are getting a new parking at the trailhead, which is going to be substantial. If you've been down there, they're working on it right now. So at the trailhead, I mean, it's going, what are the numbers? I mean, it's 80?
I think it's 80.
Yeah, it's 80. So at the, you know, the Foothills trailhead. So that's gonna be very important for parking. So I wouldn't want to go up to the higher than 114. So that's alternative two. So alternative two is not too bad. You got your pickle, you got your pump, and you got the playground. And what I'm struggling a little bit with is where to put the pickleball courts. I mean, it could work there as an alternative two. One of the things about alternative one that concerns me is you put too much stuff up to the base of the vista. You look at the corridor. So, you know, you're looking at the mountain. And if you have a bunch of pickleball courts or something in the way of that vista, I think that's interfering. So that's one of the reasons I don't like option one, because you're crowding up into that area, and that's part of the peacefulness and the scenic view there.
That's where two takes it up in that corner. It keeps that corridor.
Yeah, so two would put it up back over there, and keep that kind of lower part of the vista area. So, you know, if alternative two is a compromise for all of us, I think it would work for me.
Okay. Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to add, you know, some of the use for that grassy lawn areas, like up at Bradley Lake Park, we have festivals and stuff, and everybody comes and puts up a bunch of pop-ups and you know, Hounds on the Hill or whatever it happens to be. And I think that we would find that they'd want to have that kind of event down in that large grassy area. And you know, just thinking about that, you know, it'd be great to have some electrical outlets available, so that if some of those pop-ups and stuff needed some electricity, that it'd be available close by.
Okay.
My only comment on, I love the grass on the right, the whole rectangular thing on the right. I
said I wanted lupin on the left.
And the left, you said, and I just think there's just something about, I like the retaining some of it along the perimeters there, but there's something about a whole patch of it.
Like field.
A field.
Yeah.
And I just don't know the second lawn in the middle, whether it's
I would concur.
would be that useful
I
as a
could
lawn.
support
You
that.
have that whole that's a big lawn on the right.
I could support that.
So if you keep the patch, you know, the lawn of lupin in the middle, I think that'd be kind of cool.
Convinced. It convinced me.
When those lupin are in bloom, you know, we make a point of going down there to.
It becomes a destination.
It becomes a destination during lupin season. So.
We could get criticized for taking all that away.
No.
And so if we keep the big patch.
I remember reading on Facebook, people that were Facebook posting on that lupin and taking pictures of their mom and their daughters.
Oh, that's
it's super cool.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
It's super popular.
I love it.
Time.
I would
Yeah.
support that. Let's see, Councilor King.
Thank you. Sorry, just maneuvering through all these drawings. I hear everyone kind of talking about alternate two. I'm okay with the lupin I'm fine with that. I think if it's possible, if we can just figure out how to put a basketball court in there somewhere. That's my only thing. And some additional parking, because I don't think the 114 stalls is going to be enough. I think if there could be a compromise somewhere in the middle of 160 to 114, somewhere in the 140-ish range, I think just by looking at the scope of this, and other things that are around this, I don't see how 114 are going to accommodate this on a nice summer day. And, you know, the county are working on their parking stalls down the road, but that's going to be quite a walk. So that's something to consider. But I would be in favor of 2, if we could add a basketball court possibly, and split the difference on the parking.
Interesting. Okay.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, good 2 cents. You know, I really at this moment in time, I just want to give huge discernment gift sets for staff and consultants to decipher. And what we gave them information. How are they going to put all these into a consensus? I have no idea.
You thought you were confused with the votes. Welcome to
I
council.
think we're doing pretty good. We could be a lot worse.
Oh, I know.
We've been way off.
But we asked the question, did you get enough information? It's kind of like, holy smokes, how do I filter this? You know, Steve, go for us. Take us in.
I was just gonna try to help you and summarize kind of where you're at. So, you know, Councilmember King, so in terms of alternative 1, there's 2 council members who are very much in
3.
favor. Alternative 1, there's 2 are very much in favor, Councilmember Ferris and Castema. Councilmember King was there, but is willing to go to 2 with the basketball court. Palmer was at 2 or 3, but now is willing to go to 2. Whitting and the mayor are both in 2. And Councilmember Dorr was strongly in favor of 3. So at this point, if you're looking at numbers, it seems like 2 is a leading contender with maybe a removal of that middle field, and the addition of a basketball court and parking is still up for debate. So that's your play-by-play from
2 as pickleball, I think.
2 seems to be the leading candidate right now.
All right.
On the parking, did you do any analysis of what's here to what's needed for parking?
Yeah, so these parking numbers are based on some guidance from the ITE, looking at the different land use types and different sports courts and things like that.
So you think 2 is appropriately scaled?
Correct.
Yeah. Again, I'll just be real careful. Our land is precious. But I hear you.
I hear you.
People want to be able to
I'm with you. I'm with you. But if you don't have stalls, people are going to be mad.
Yeah, so I just, after Councilmember King talked, it occurred to me, I was interested in having festivals out there in the lawn area. And I know at Bradley Lake, when something like that's going on there, the parking lot fills up, the parking lot across the street fills up, and Walmart parking lot starts filling up, and there's no Walmart near here. So
There's a warehouse kitty corner with lots of parking.
Will they let us in there?
Maybe, but you know.
I'm gonna lean.
No.
Actually, if we're talking festivals, it happens when people are off work. So if there's a bunch of warehouses around, maybe people do park in the warehouse parking lot.
Good luck.
So I take it back.
Okay, council, staff, you've got great input, and you'll take it from here. Then there's no action on this, right?
So
Councilmember Dorr, excuse me, sorry.
that's okay. Thank you. So I can go with alternate 2. I do want to point out that so with the Lupin, if we take that middle field, you basically have it from the edge of the right field, because I'm assuming that's what the purple flowers are, is the Lupin. So you're taking that section from there clear up to the far north corner. That whole area is basically Lupin. Just pointing that out. But I agree. Again, I think the parking is important. Perhaps we can, what Councilmember King said, if we split the difference and then in this bottom corner next to pickleball, that we can add a basketball court somewhere right in that area. I could live with that. Thank you.
Okay, I think we've got pretty good consensus in terms of, general scope. Yeah. So they can fine tune that and bring it back to us. Is that correct? No course of action on this. Is that correct? All right.
That's correct. So
Sure.
next steps for us would be to develop the preferred alternative and bring it back to you.
Good. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you all for your time.
Can we do that in a couple meetings, Steve? Or soon?
Next week.
See you in 2 weeks.
I think December 5th was the plan, assuming that. the
December?
consultant- December 5th was the plan, assuming they can come up
Put it
with the
together.
alternative by then.
And if it wasn't, it is now.
Yeah,
See us
December. Like to get it done.
Because you want a piece of this before you head out. right?
Yes.
You want a piece of this.
Well, we're so close.
We're so
We are
close.
the members here. We don't want to mess up the.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Mr. Mayor, is it possible, Steve, if we can schedule them at the very top of that meeting, since they sat through
Sure.
4 hours of this one,
Let's do it. Put them at the top.
maybe?
Sure.
Would you-
Okay, let's do it. Okay. And then, council, it's been a long night. It's almost 10 o'clock. Do you want to take care of 7A now, this issue, or do you want to bring that to the next meeting? Any thoughts, council? Next week is fine. Is there anything pressing, Mr. Beal, if we wanted to wait till next week? I know you've been waiting to deliver this all night, so would it be okay if we waited, or is there anything pressing that we should talk about? You educate us a little bit.
Well, it's up to the council. It's not an ordinance, it's a resolution. So the intent is to have it adopted on December 5th.
Okay.
If you want to provide feedback on it now, we can do that. We can bring a resolution to you with the document that's already in your packet, and you can provide feedback then. The intent of tonight's presentation was to walk through the public feedback and then see if you guys have any further direction on changes to the ESAP.
Why don't we do the presentation at least?
Can we just do a brief view, and then if we have
See where we are?
maybe a brief presentation? If we want to dig deeper, we could maybe do that afterwards or something.
Yeah. I say, well, at least Chris has been here all night. Let's just do the
All right.
presentation.
All right, let's do
Sounds
it.
like probably 10 minutes, right?
Take
At
us
most?
in.
Yeah.
Take us in. Let's get her going.
So in your packet, what you'll find in the packet is the same policy document that you reviewed in September. It's further formatted. It's got more columns in it, essentially. It's not completely done. Our consultants are still working on the final formatting of that document, but within the packet, you'll see that. And then you also see a public comment summary. So we'll walk through the public comment summary here, just high level, and see if there are any requested changes. Again, this is a non-action meeting, so you don't have to change anything. You can change stuff at the last meeting because, again, it's a resolution adoption. So right now where we're at, we are basically towards the end of the process. Is meeting number 4 with council. The next steps would be the final adoption resolution and then implementation, as well as development of the climate element in the future. Skip that's the last slide. Okay, so we ran the public online comment document. It basically was sort of like an online story map. People could flip through the document using a program called Conveo, and then they could insert comments directly into that document itself. Comment period ran from October 2nd through the 23rd. We had 240 site views and nearly 90 new comments on that. And it was promoted through our project website. We sent out a couple of email blasts, both to our project email list and to the comp plan email list, as well as in the e-newsletter, I think twice. and as well as on social media. You've seen the focus area, so I'll skip that. So just walking through this again, there's a more complete summary. We did not try to copy and paste everything from the public comment summary document. We did get 8 total comments in the overarching municipal, mixed comments, but mostly supportive on the sustainability coordinator position. Some comments about making human health and well-being a first priority over making physical improvements. And then some concerns about impacts to the electrical grid with EV measures. Under buildings and energy, we had a couple of questions about effectiveness with electric heat pump and solar and wind opportunities. And again, some concern about electrical energy emissions and promoting more widespread adoption. We had a lot of comments under transportation, a lot of them under expanding and supportive for expanding bike and walking infrastructure. A lot of comments about how our community is behind on bike infrastructure, which is true, and we have not been implementing our active transportation plan. So we actually had quite a few comments on that. Support to expand EV infrastructure planning in the community for other areas other than just public, and then some concern over the use of city funds for the installation of EV infrastructure in public locations, mostly over cost. We had 13 comments in ecosystem health. Some comments around tree protection measures in conflict with growth and development priorities. We had some interesting comments on this one that probably will result in some changes that were suggestions from the public around promoting green infrastructure job growth. Some questions and suggestions around gray water infrastructure and green stormwater infrastructure, as well as promoting principles of equity and considering the impacts to the community. Over consumption and waste, these ones are mostly supportive. There were some really good comments in here from public about expanding public education opportunities around proper disposal, as well as waste reduction measures, and then just overall some concerns about cost associated with some of the additional programs for waste collection. Community resilience and well-being, we actually had the most comments under this section with 18. We had some concerns over the cost of providing financial incentives, prioritizing and incentivizing lead and water testing in communities where we have some holes. Community outreach, again, some really good comments there. We also had a comment that probably is more suited for emergency management, but some comments around creating an oil and freight train emergency response plan. Again, that's probably less this document and more our emergency management and response plan. As well as providing local food initiatives and local farm to school initiatives and education programs. So good comments there. Okay, so last slide here, the next steps, again, we would come back to you. The idea is to come back on the final adoption date in December 5th, with a final formatted document. So again, the document you're seeing is probably like the 80% draft. We're going to be pulling in parts and pieces from the earlier background studies that we did. And it's going to be a lot more formatted. The document you have essentially is a PDF spreadsheet of our working copy. But we did add, council had asked about adding indicators of success. So we added that into there. We've added things around effectiveness, or I think it's like the impact and cost indicators. And there's a key at the end of the document so you can cross-reference that, as well as just what are the constraints to implementation. So it's a little more built out, but it's not complete. So we wanted to hear tonight if you had any comments or any further thoughts. Again, the document you see, the policies were the same policies that we reviewed with the council in September, released to the public in the survey. We haven't yet amended those. We're actually working on some of those amendments right now with our consultant team. But we wanted to hear if there were any suggestions on things that we need to add, or any reflections on the public comments as we prepare the final document for adoption in December. So I think that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Council?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I think you did a fantastic job on this, and a lot of the things that I had been saying are on this. And this is not our comments. This is simply from your survey.
Yeah, those are from the survey. Yep.
Survey, okay. And then I'm not sure if so cash incentive or some sort of incentivized program, people were more concerned about how much that would cost the city rather than being for it.
Yeah, there were a lot of comments littered throughout the document, concerns about cost.
Okay, but
Various functions.
but I would imagine that there would be a lot of grant opportunities around some of these initiatives, especially with the what's the bill? The infrastructure bill.
Bipartisan for the IRA.
I get, yeah, what he said.
Right.
So, and just that we have a lot more money coming through to, through that. So anyway, good job. I just wanted to say that, just so we can spend another 5 minutes, Robin rambling. Okay, thank you.
Excellent.
I mean, that's a good point. Public to understand that
Your mic's on.
most of these things are going to be paid for with grant dollars. There's grant dollars available, so we're not dipping in significantly into our current funds for a lot of this work. It's really going to be driven by grant dollars.
Okay, Councilor Berdor, did you have anything you want to add on this?
I did not. Thanks, Chris. It's great presentation. Great product. Thank you.
Okay, Council, anything else on this? Okay, good. Thank you. Council, let's turn it over to anything else. We'll turn it over to our city manager's report.
Yeah, I will keep it very brief. I just want to congratulate Chief Engel and the Puyallup Police Department on their official accreditation. They,
Everybody.
They officially received that this last week by the Washington State Association of Police and Sheriffs, Police Chiefs and Sheriffs. It's a quite a feat and an incredible amount of standards they have had to meet, and it was a team effort from the chief through the administrative staff and the command staff. So congratulations, Chief. Congratulations to all the staff and the troops who made that happen. It's a great accomplishment. So that's the extent of my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, we're going to go into council reports. Councilmember Ferris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
I will also keep this short. I am eternally grateful that none of you are previous MMA fighters. The end.
Okay.
Sorry, you have to see today's news in order to get that vote.
Councilmember King.
No comment.
Okay. Councilmember Dorr.
I will pass. It is 1:06 where I am at. So.
Oh my. Oh my.
Yeah, I have class at 8 o'clock in the morning, so I'm passing. Thank you.
Oh, good. Yes, I don't blame you. Councilmember Palmer.
I will pass.
Councilmember Castema.
Councilmember Ferris, how do you know I was never one of those? I will pass.
Deputy Mayor.
I will pass before Councilmember Dorr passes out.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I'd like to just yeah. I'll pass. Other than that, no executive session, meeting adjourned. Thank you so much. God bless.